Chapter 1. Abandoned. Take these things and get lost. A small cloth bag fell to the ground in front of Gu Yundong. The mouth of the bag opened, revealing approximately 10 shriveled potatoes. Gu Yundong leaned against a large rock behind her. Her face was sallow and her body was weak. She looked up and saw a woman's somewhat mean face. She finally understood her current situation. She had transmigrated from the zombie-infested apocalypse to Gene Kingdom and transmigrated into the body of a 13-year-old farm girl with the same name as her. She had a father, a mother, a younger sister, and a younger brother. In the 17th year of Hongqing, Yongning Prefecture had no crops because of a drought. The commoners were struggling to survive, and large groups of refugees began to migrate to the nearby prefectures to seek survival. As for her entire family, they were on the way to escape, and they had already left Yongning Prefecture for more than half a month. The person in front of her, who threw the potatoes at her with a charitable expression, was the original host's step-grandmother, Mrs. Zhao. Beside her stood more than 10 people from second uncle and third uncle's families. All of them had cold gazes while looking at their refugee family of 4. Gu Yundong did not have any strength in her body. This was because she had been hungry for too long. Her head was still in a dizzy state, and she could not even straighten her body slightly. She looked away and ignored Mrs. Zhao. Her eyes swept across second uncle and third uncle's family, who were watching coldly from the side, and finally landed on old Gu, who was sitting on a rock. Grandma was a step-grandmother, but grandfather was her biological grandfather. Old Gu felt a little uncomfortable under her clear and piercing gaze. He coughed lightly and sighed softly after a while. Yundong, don't blame us. It's just that everyone is in trouble and we don't have much food left. Your family doesn't have a strong laborer, and your mother is mentally disabled. She can't do anything except eat and sleep. The world is too chaotic. Everyone can't even take care of their own families. We really don't have the energy to take care of you. You can only pray for yourself. This bag of potatoes is enough for your mother and the others to last for 2 days. You can think of a way yourself later. Whether you can survive or not is also the will of the heavens. Gu Yundong sneered secretly. She had lived in the apocalypse for 2 years and had long seen the evilness of human nature. Old Gu had clearly done something evil, but he still found an excuse to push it to the heavens. Wasn't he afraid of being struck by lightning? Unfortunately, she didn't have the strength now. Otherwise, why would she let him talk nonsense here? She was disdainful, but a small figure beside her stubbornly wiped his eyes and said with a slight choked voice, "We do have strong labor. My father disappeared to lure away the bandits. He will come back. Gu Yundong knew that he was the original owner's younger brother, Gu Yunshu. He was only 5 years old this year, but he looked to be only 3 or 4 years old. The original host's father was called Gu Dajiang. 2 days ago, they encountered a group of bandits. Gu Dajiang and her second uncle, Gu Dai, used themselves as bait to divert the bandits' attention and give them a chance to escape. Later, Gu Dai returned, but Gu Dajiang was nowhere to be found. In everyone's eyes, Gu Dajiang was most likely killed by that group of bandits. The little Gu Yunshu refused to believe it. He felt that his father was still alive and would definitely come back. Old Gu did not want to say anything else. He just waved his hand and said, "All right, that's all. Take care of yourselves." As he spoke, he paused. In the end, he could not bear to part with his grandson. He asked Gu Yunshu, "I can still bring you along. Why don't you come with us?" Mrs. Zhao, who was at the side, was unhappy. "Why bring him? We don't even have enough food ourselves. His portion is gone. If you want to follow, find your own food and eat dirt." Before she could finish speaking, Gu Yunshu had already grabbed Gu Yundong's hand. The corners of his mouth were pursed tightly. "I'm going with my eldest sister." Gu Yundong subconsciously wanted to retract her hand. She was not used to physical contact with people, especially in the apocalypse. It was almost instinctive to guard against people approaching her. However, she did not have much strength now. This little kid seemed to be afraid that he would be separated from her and held her fingers tightly. Because of this, Gu Yundong could clearly feel his small, thin, and trembling hand. She pursed her lips and did not say anything in the end. Old Gu was provoked by Gu Yunshu's fearful attitude. He stood up angrily. Up to you. With that, he left with Mrs. Zhao and the others. Madame Yang, who was Gu Yundong's mother, had been standing at the side and was confused. She was carrying a basket with a 3-year-old girl in it. The girl was sleeping groggily, and such a huge commotion did not wake her up. Seeing that old Gu and the others had left, Madame Yang followed them helplessly. When she turned around and saw that Gu Yundong and Gu Yunshu were still in the same place, she hurriedly walked back and squatted beside her, asking in confusion, "Dong Dong? Let's go, let's go." Madame Yang wasn't very smart, but she knew people. She still didn't understand that the Gu family had abandoned her and her 3 daughters. She was just curious why the Gu family didn't wait for them. Gu Yundong was still recovering her strength. It was difficult for her to even speak now, and she had no patience to explain. On the other hand, Gu Yunshu comforted Madame Yang in a low voice. "Mother, eldest sister is tired. Let's leave later." Eldest sister had fainted previously. Because of this, Grandpa and the step-grandma finally had an excuse to leave their family. Gu Yunshu was worried. His father was not around, his eldest sister was sick, his mother was mentally disabled, and his younger sister was weak. He was now the only male in the family. Although he was only 5 years old, he had to take care of his family. Gu Yunshu tried his best to straighten his small body and looked at Gu Yundong, who had closed her eyes to rest. At this moment, Gu Yundong was actually happy. She had lived in the apocalypse for a year, and she had the mentality that every day she could survive was a good day. Although this place was also in a chaotic world, at least there were no zombies or mutated animals and plants here. After the disaster caused by the drought, her life would slowly improve. The future here was filled with hope. As for the original host's family, they had given her a chance to be reborn. As long as they did not cause trouble for her, Gu Yundong would treat it as repaying them and would not abandon them. Just as she was thinking about it, she suddenly heard hurried footsteps. She raised her head slightly and saw her second uncle, Gu Dai, who had returned. Chapter 2. Silver Gu Yundong did not have a good impression of this second uncle at all. Back then, he and Gu Dajiang had lured the bandits away, but only he had returned. This made her think more about this and link Gu Dajiang's disappearance to him. Gu Dai ran to Gu Yundong's side and squatted down to tug at her sleeve without a word. "What are you doing?" Gu Yundong regained some strength and retracted her hand. "In any case, you're about to die soon. Don't waste the money your father left for you. He'll help you give it to your grandparents." Gu Dai picked up a stone beside him and threw it at her head. Gu Yundong only had time to curse before she fainted. "Eldest sister!" Gu Yunshu screamed and pounced over to slap Gu Dai crazily. Madame Yang also reacted. She put down the basket on her back and came up to scratch him. Gu Dai took 2 steps back from the 2 of them. Finally, he grabbed Gu Yunshu impatiently and grabbed his neck with one hand. He shouted at Madame Yang, who was about to pounce on him and bite him. "Stop! If you come any closer, I'll strangle your son to death." Madame Yang suddenly stopped. She hesitated and did not dare to go forward. She looked at her son and then at her unconscious daughter. Suddenly, she knelt down in front of Gu Dai. "Second uncle, please, I beg you, put a shoe down. He hurts. He hurts." Gu Yunshu's face turned purple from the squeezing, and his eyes turned red. Tears welled up in his eyes and refused to fall. He ignored them and struggled frantically. "Mother, get up. Don't kneel. He's not human. He's a beast. He hit my sister and is trying to force us to die. I won't let him off even if I become a ghost." Gu Dai did not care about what he scolded. Without Madame Yang in the way, he walked back to Gu Yundong's side and pulled off her sleeve. He knew that his eldest brother had secretly given this niece some silver to protect herself. He had also accidentally seen Gu Yundong sewing the silver into her sleeve. That was why he had come back to get it. In any case, in this world, their family would definitely not live for more than a few days. Instead of letting the silver be buried with them, it was better for him to take it. Gu Dai had no qualms about it. He rolled up his sleeves and saw a tail of silver. His big brother was really scheming. He actually hid so much money secretly. After receiving the silver, Gu Dai threw Gu Yunshu away. Madame Yang quickly went forward to catch him to prevent him head from hitting the stone. "Ashu, mother is here. It doesn't hurt." Gu Yunshu almost couldn't breathe. After regaining his freedom, he finally began to pant heavily. Gu Dai stood up and glanced at them with a smug smile. "Don't blame me. It was your grandparents who decided to chase you away. I'm a junior, so I can only listen to them." After saying that, he snorted and strode in the direction of old Gu and the others. Old Gu had seen his second son leave. Now that he saw him return, he frowned slightly and asked, "Where did you go?" Gu Dai did not hide it from him. That girl still had money hidden on her. "I brought it to father and mother." Old Gu stopped in his tracks. "They only have so little food. Why did you still go? Why can't we go?" Before he could finish speaking, Madame Zhao couldn't help but scold. "I told you that your eldest son is dishonest. He didn't show filial piety to the two of us when he had money and even secretly gave it to his wife and daughter. This heartless thing. We worked so hard to raise him up, but we only raised such an ingrate. We should have beaten him to death long ago. So what if second brother took the money? Anyway, they won't be able to use it even if we gave it to her. Don't let it end up in someone else's hands. They might as well give it to us." Old Gu opened his mouth. After a long time, he sighed and said, "It's their bad luck." He tacitly agreed with Mrs. Zhao. Gu Dai put away the silver with a clear conscience. "Mother, I'll keep this silver for you. I'm young and strong, so it's not easy for me to lose it." Mrs. Zhao glanced at him but did not say anything. In this world, she was not willing to make her son unhappy over a few dozen copper coins. If she angered her son and he abandoned her, she would not be able to live as an old lady. She thought that there was not much money, so she let him be. Chapter 3. I'm hungry. When Gu Yundong woke up again, she was on Madame Yang's back. She could hear her panting as she walked. Madame Yang was very thin and weak. Gu Yundong could clearly feel her shoulders shaking, as if they would break if she was not careful. "Dong dong, dong dong, you're awake?" Perhaps sensing movement, Madame Yang turned her head slightly and said happily. Only then did Gu Yundong realize that there was still a basket hanging in front of Madame Yang. The little girl in the basket was still sleeping soundly and had yet to wake up. Gu Yunshu also heard the sound and hurriedly looked up. "Eldest sister, you're awake? Hang in there a little longer. We'll be there soon." "Where are we going?" Gu Yundong asked hoarsely. The path they were on was a little narrow, and there were not many people on the road. The sky was already dark, so they had to find a place to spend the night. "We're going back. We're going to the village we went to last night to stay for the night. That place is a little closer." Gu Yunshu raised his head, wiped his face, and tried his best to smile. This decision was made by him, and he was actually very nervous. He did not know if it was right. After all, compared to the unknown direction in front of him, he could only return to the place he recognized. Big sister needed to rest, and he was very afraid. Only then did Gu Yundong realize that there was a mark on his neck. Coupled with his huge head, it was especially shocking. Her face darkened slightly. "Where's Gu Dai?" "He stole eldest sister's money and ran away." Gu Yunshu finally couldn't hold it in anymore. He couldn't maintain his smile and lowered his head to wipe his tears. "Yunshu is useless. I didn't protect eldest sister well or protect the money. I'm sorry." Gu Yundong wanted to tell him not to cry. She had been in the apocalypse for a year and had long understood that tears were the most useless thing. If the money was gone, so be it. What was the use of crying? When there was a chance later, she would make him pay back 10 times or 100 times. What was the big deal? However, she quickly reacted. This was not the apocalypse, and Gu Yunshu was not a stranger. He was her younger brother. However, she did not know how to comfort others. Fortunately, Madame Yang's voice quickly sounded in her ears. "Ashu, don't cry. It's your second uncle who's bad. Well, ignore him in the future. Mother dotes on you. Gu Yunshu was comforted. He sniffled hard. I won't cry. I'm the only man here. Don't cry. As he spoke, he hugged the bag of potatoes in his arms and puffed out his small chest. Gu Yundong was speechless. Fortunately, they arrived at the village quickly. The village was quiet and almost empty. Everyone was either dead or fleeing, looking for a place to survive. Gu Yunshu originally wanted to go to the house they had gone to yesterday, but he was stopped by Gu Yundong. In the end, they chose a house a little away from the center of the village. The place was not big, but it was remote and quiet. There were only 2 families beside it. When they entered the house, Madame Yang carefully put Gu Yundong down. Gu Yundong's strength had slowly recovered, but she was still a little dizzy from the blow to her head. Gu Yunshu carefully placed the potatoes in front of her and looked up. Eldest sister, rest first. They'll go find some firewood. He was very sensible. When he spoke to Gu Yundong, he tried his best to smile so that she would not worry. With that, he turned around and went to look for the woodshed. Gu Yundong looked at his back view and was worried that his head would snap at any moment. After a while, he came in with 2 thin bundles of firewood and called out to Madame Yang. Mother, help me close the window. Okay. Madame Yang was feeding Gu Yunka water from a bamboo jar. The little girl swallowed unconsciously and finally reacted. After the windows and door was closed, Gu Yunshu began to roast potatoes. Gu Yundong watched as he took out 2 small potatoes from the cloth bag. He skewered them while treating them very preciously and placed them on the firewood to rotate. When it was about time, he handed one to her. As for the other one, he carefully peeled off the skin and delivered it to Gu Yunk's mouth. Then he extinguished the fire. Gu Yundong looked at the small potatoes in her hand and then at Gu Yunshu and Madame Yang, who clearly did not intend to eat them. What about yours? Elder sister, eat. I'm not hungry. Although he said that, his eyes could not help but drift to the potatoes. Then he immediately lowered his head. Madame Yang was much more direct. She swallowed hard. I'm hungry. Chapter 4. Spatial Pocket. Gu Yunshu's small face flushed red. He tugged at it with his small hands and comforted Madame Yang softly. Mother, we don't have much food left. Let's not eat today, okay? They'll go out and see if there's anything else. There were only about 10 small potatoes, so they definitely had to take care of the injured elder sister and the starving younger sister first. Gu Yunshu was a little sad, and there was even despair in his eyes. If they could not find food later, they might really starve to death. They still had a long way to go. Madame Yang was mentally disabled, but she could listen. She licked her lips and stared at the potatoes, but she still nodded. Then I won't eat it. Gu Yundong was speechless. It would be strange if she could still eat like this. Moreover, she had not planned to eat it in the first place. The potatoes had already germinated. If she ate them, she would be poisoned. Gu Yundong reached out and took the potato from Gu Yunk's hand as well. I won't eat this for now. They'll go outside to find something else. She had already recovered her strength. Although her body was still weak, she was no longer unable to walk like before. Gu Yundong slowly stood up. Gu Yunshu was stunned and quickly stood up as well. He reached out to block her. No, eldest sister, your health isn't good. I can do it. They'll go find her. No need. You stay. Gu Yundong walked around him. Big sister. Stay. Gu Yundong's voice deepened. She actually did not have much patience, especially now that her stomach was empty, so she was a little irritable. Gu Yunshu was stunned. He had never seen his big sister like this. Her eyes were a little cold and stubborn. He could not help but put down his hand and nod obediently. He watched her leave in a daze. After leaving, Gu Yundong let out a sigh of relief. She was an orphan in her previous life and had been unlucky since she was young. Among the people she met, be it the director of the orphanage or the teachers of the school, their attitudes towards her were average or even bad. Hence, she was at a loss when she suddenly had a few family members who were concerned about her. Now, she was a little glad that she had separated from the Gu family. Other than her younger brother, younger sister, and the mentally disabled Madame Yang. There was no one else around her. No one suspected that the host had actually changed to her. Gu Yundong slowly walked to the corner of the house and looked around. It was quiet and there was no movement. Then, she closed her eyes slightly and stopped breathing. In the next moment, a small bag of rice suddenly appeared in her hand. She smiled, and her eyes lit up slightly. Sure enough, her spatial storage followed her. The supplies in her storage also followed her. She had unintentionally obtained this spatial storage space when the apocalypse first arrived. It was about the size of an acre and time was still inside. What was placed inside was the same as when she took it out. When she first obtained this space, Gu Yundong began to collect resources. After all, no one knew when the apocalypse would end. If she wanted to survive, she had to have something to rely on. She had a lot of things in her spatial storage now. She did not lack rice, flour, or mineral water. With these things, what was there to be afraid of on the way to escape from the drought? Previously, when Gu Dai hit her head with a stone, she almost reflexively wanted to go to the spatial storage to take out her dagger to counterattack. At that time, she realized that her storage space was still there. However, she had paused for a moment because of this. In just a short while, she was knocked out by Gu Dai. She would definitely take revenge when she had the chance. Gu Yundong took out water and alcohol from her spatial storage and disinfected the wound on her head. Fortunately, Gu Dai was not very strong. The main reason why she fainted was because she was hungry, and her injuries were not serious. Then, she squatted down and took out the small cloth bag she had brought out just now. She quietly poured the rice in. After some thought, she took out 2 packets of pickled vegetables and put them in bamboo tubes. Only then did she heave a sigh of relief and walk back into the house. Chapter 5. White rice. As soon as she entered the courtyard, Gu Yundong heard a puzzled voice coming from the room. Mother, eldest sister seems to be different from before. In the past, eldest sister always cried and was especially afraid of pain. Now, she seems to have become so manly in an instant. Gu Yundong was speechless. Did he not know how to speak? What did he mean by being so manly? However, her personality was indeed very different from Gu Yundong's in the past. She had to think of a reasonable excuse to explain. However, before she could think of anything, Gu Yunshu's voice sounded again. It must be because Grandpa and Grandma chased us away and agitated eldest sister. Father is not around, so she feels that she has to protect and take care of us. It's not easy for eldest sister. Mother, tell me, what way can I grow up in an instant and become a strong laborer at home? This way, eldest sister won't have to pretend to be so manly. I'm so useless now. Madame Yang tilted her head, not understanding. I've grown up. I'm so tall. Gu Yundong had mixed feelings. This little thing was still young, but he was very capable of worrying. However, from his voice, she could tell that there was nothing wrong with his voice. It seemed that although the marks on his neck were shocking, Gu Dai had not really injured him. Gu Yundong lifted the things in her hand and stepped harder. The voices inside immediately stopped. She pushed open the door and saw Gu Yunshu standing in front of Madame Yang and Gu Yunka with his hands outstretched. His little face was tense and he looked vigilant. Seeing that it was her, he heaved a sigh of relief and smiled widely. Big sister, you're back. He shifted his gaze and saw the thing in her hand. His big eyes instantly lit up. Have you found something to eat? Okay. Gu Yundong placed the cloth bag on the ground. I'll go to the kitchen to see if there's any water. She turned around and went out again. There was definitely no water in this place. She was just pretending. She went to the kitchen to find a jar and took out the mineral water from her space to pour it in before returning to her room. In the room, Gu Yunshu's eyes were already wide open. He looked at the white rice in the bag in disbelief and stuttered, Big sister, where did you find it? It's so white and there's so much. He had never seen rice so white and big. Each grain seemed to be transparent and looked better than the most expensive rice in the rice shop in town. Gu Yunshu could not help but gulp. Felt like a dream. I found it under the bed in one of the rooms of the family next door, Gu Yundong said. Gu Yunshu was stunned for a moment before he came to a realization. I know. That family must be like second aunt. They secretly hid the food and forgot to take it with them when they escaped. After saying that, he nodded vigorously. Previously, when she was about to leave the village, second aunt secretly took out 2 large packets of sweet potato jerky from under the bed and prepared to secretly take them away. She had secretly concealed them in her room all these years. She did not expect Grandma to see them and scold second aunt at home for being an ingrate. The entire Gu family knew about this. Now that he heard that these white rice were found under the bed, Gu Yunshu immediately found a reasonable explanation. Gu Yundong felt that there was no need for her to think of an excuse. He could always find an excuse for her. Hence, she nodded. Probably. As she spoke, she turned around and closed the door, rekindling the fire from before. After adding water to the earthen jar, Gu Yundong planned to cook some porridge to drink. The entire family was very hungry and their stomachs were empty. They could only eat soft and tender food. Gu Yunshu's heart ached immediately when she poured out a large handful of rice. Elder sister, don't eat too much. I'm actually not very hungry. I can eat less. Don't you want to grow up quickly? How can you grow up if you don't eat more? Gu Yunshu was stunned and immediately conflicted. He wanted to grow up quickly, but they did not have much food. If they ate too much now, what would happen in the future? He was in a dilemma, but Gu Yundong had already quickly cooked the porridge. Chapter 6. Subtle movement. Gu Yundong only heaved a sigh of satisfaction when she ate the warm porridge. Her body was too poor. Although she did not eat well in the apocalypse, she had a spatial storage long ago and collected a lot of supplies. Even if she was not as free to eat as in the apocalypse, she was much better off than most people. It was not a problem for her to eat until she was 70% full. However, here, even before fleeing the drought, the porridge they ate was only enough to fill their stomachs. There were not many rice grains at all. After fleeing the drought, they only had 1 meal a day. It was rare for them to eat to even 20% full. Big sister, it's so delicious. Smells so good. Gu Yunshu drank extremely slowly. He had never eaten such delicious porridge. It was sweet and fragrant. It was simply a delicacy in this world. His expression was too intoxicated. His little mouth was pouting, and he could not bear to swallow it. Madame Yang eagerly took 2 sips before carefully feeding Gu Yunka. The little girl did not have much strength. Now that she had eaten the porridge, her eyes lit up and the corners of her eyes curved. She immediately became energetic. It's delicious. At that moment, Gu Yundong felt inexplicably satisfied. This feeling was very unfamiliar. She could not help but cover her chest. It was rare for the family of 4 to have a sumptuous dinner. All of them felt extremely happy. They held their stomachs and lay on the ground, not wanting to move. Gu Yundong's stomach was no longer burning, and she had strength now. She finally had the strength to think about the rest of the journey. They did not lack food now. She had enough food in her spatial storage to support them until they reached the relatively rich prefecture capital. However, without transportation, they would definitely walk very slowly. The others' matters were fine, but what she was most worried about was that they would encounter bandits and starving desperate refugees. This was the greatest danger along the way. In particular, her family did not even have an adult man. In the eyes of others, they were easy to bully and could easily become the target of those with ulterior motives. It seemed that they could not take the main road anymore. At least, they could not walk to places with many people. When they left home, Gu Dajiang had told her about the routes and directions of the nearby prefecture cities. She more or less knew them. Speaking of Gu Dajiang, she did not know if he was dead or alive or where he was. Gu Yunshu was also thinking about his father, especially after eating a good meal. He couldn't help but wipe his eyes with his small hand. He raised his head and tried his best not to cry. Gu Yundong turned around and saw that his head looked like it was about to break. She was a little frightened. She quickly coughed lightly and said, "It's getting late. Rest early." She got the 3 of them to lie on the bed and took out the thin blanket from the basket to cover them. They had brought it from home. Madame Yang had always kept it in the basket on her body. Other than the young lady, Gu Yunka, there was also a thin blanket, 2 sets of clothes, and a bamboo tube filled with water. There was nothing else in the basket. Gu Yunshu lay down and realized that his eldest sister had not come over. He quickly sat up again. Eldest sister, aren't you going to sleep? I slept a lot during the day. I can't sleep now. Go to sleep. Oh. Gu Yunshu nodded and lay down in peace. After eating and drinking their fill, they slept especially quickly. Before long, the 3 of them's breathing stabilized. Gu Yundong sat down at the side. She had no intention of sleeping at all. In the apocalypse, as long as one stayed outside at night, one had to keep watch. Otherwise, she would not know when she would encounter danger. She had already developed a habit, and it was the same here. Fortunately, she was awake this night. Madame Yang and the others had only slept for an hour when she heard a subtle movement outside. Chapter 7. All should die. Gu Yundong suddenly opened her eyes and walked to the courtyard outside. The wall of the courtyard was not very tall. There was a sauce jar under the corner of the wall and a wooden board covering it. Gu Yundong slowly stepped on it, revealing half of her head to look out of the wall. She saw 2 tall men standing under the moonlight. One of them lowered his voice and said, "Keep your voice down. Don't wake them up." Another person rubbed his leg. "How would I know that there was a stone here? Didn't I accidentally trip?" Gu Yundong narrowed his eyes slightly. She had placed this stone before. Other than this stone, there was also a wooden bolt lying horizontally on the door. Fortunately, she had placed something. Otherwise, she would not have heard the commotion so quickly. What were these 2 trying to do so sneakily? As she was thinking, the 2 men turned slightly to reveal their faces. Gu Yundong's expression suddenly changed. She had inherited the original host's memories. In her memory, she had just seen these 2 faces in the morning. At that time, they had not been separated from the Gu family. When Gu Dai was walking, he accidentally bumped into one of them. At that time, their fierce gazes were like wolves looking at their prey. Just one look was enough to make people tremble in fear. Gu Dai was scared and apologized profusely. The 2 of them kicked Gu Dai viciously before leaving. However, before leaving, Gu Yundong could clearly see the malicious look in their eyes. So why were they here at this moment? "All right, be careful. Don't be so clumsy." The voices of the 2 people at the corner of the wall sounded again. I know. Hurry up. When I think of those 2 fair and tender kids, I'm already drooling. We're quite lucky. One of them happens to be unconscious. As long as we deal with the other one, those 2 kids will be ours. You only know how to eat. I say you were here spying on them earlier, right? Is it this place? The 2 of them walked forward as they spoke. Gu Yundong's expression changed drastically. Her hands and feet were cold, and she almost fell from the sauce jar uncontrollably. In just 2 sentences, there was a lot of information. In this chaotic world, there were naturally people who even ate their children. Gu Yundong had also stayed in the apocalypse for a year. She had even seen such people with her own eyes. No wonder their eyes were red and filled with malice. There was also a stench of decay on their bodies. So that was how it was. These 2 people were clearly addicted to eating human flesh. Gu Yundong's eyes gradually turned cold and cruel. There was even a hint of bloodlust. In her opinion, no matter what environment a human was in, they had to at least have the most basic morals. Otherwise, they would be worse than a beast who lived on instinct. And this was her bottom line. Moreover, from what they said, they were targeting her family. There were 4 people, 2 little children, and herself who had been carried in while unconscious. They only needed to deal with Madame Yang. All the more reason not to let them off. Gu Yundong watched as the 2 of them walked to the door of a house in front and quietly entered. She moved her arms and legs. Although her strength was slowly returning, her body was still very weak. Trying to kill 2 people in close combat was like committing suicide. Unfortunately, she did not get a gun in the apocalypse. Otherwise, long-range attacks could easily kill them. Wait a minute. She didn't have a gun, but she seemed to have a crossbow. She had accidentally seen it once when she was collecting supplies. However, there weren't many arrows and she rarely used it. Gu Yundong's eyes were filled with amusement as she jumped down from the wall. She quickly walked to the door of the house next door. The two of them had entered already and the courtyard door was not closed. Gu Yundong looked over and saw one of them standing in the courtyard. The other person was nowhere to be seen. Very well. One at a time. Gu Yundong adjusted the crossbow and aimed it at his neck. Chapter 8. Kill with a whoosh. The crossbow bolt suddenly shot towards the man's throat with lightning speed. After piercing through his neck, it nailed to the ground with a whoosh. The man didn't even have time to react. He just widened his eyes in disbelief and struggled to make a hee-hee sound. In the end, he fell to the ground with an indignant expression. Gu Yundong heaved a sigh of relief and carefully walked in with the crossbow. She had only taken 2 steps when she heard staggering footsteps coming from inside the house. Gu Yundong suddenly stopped in her tracks and aimed the crossbow in her hand at the door. Soon, a man stumbled out of the house. He covered his arm with one hand and blood flowed between his fingers. His face was filled with panic. When he walked to the courtyard, he wanted to call his companion. But when he turned around, he saw that his companion had already fallen to the ground and died with remaining grievances. Gu Yundong was surprised. She readied the crossbow in her hand. However, before she could aim, another man walked out of the house. That person was dressed in tight clothes, and his face was filled with a murderous aura. He held a sword in his hand, and blood was dripping from the tip of the sword. He immediately saw Gu Yundong standing there. He turned around and saw the man lying on the ground. He understood and nodded at her. "Thank you." Gu Yundong was speechless. So there was someone in the house? And from the looks of it, he was a very skilled martial artist. The man had already turned around and looked at the thief who had broken into his courtyard and tried to commit murder. The latter knelt on the ground in despair. "Please spare me, hero. I was blinded and didn't recognize you. I deserve to die. I'm a bastard. Let me go. I'm really hungry. I have no choice in this world. Ah!" Before he could finish speaking, the man suddenly raised the sword in his hand and pierced his neck. That person only let out a short scream before falling to the ground without a sound. The 2 men worse than beasts were already dead, but Gu Yundong did not dare to relax. She stood face to face with the man and began to measure and assess the current situation. At this moment, another figure ran out of the house. It was a small boy that looked to be no more than 5 or 6 years old. "Uncle Gao, Brother Bai is awake. Go in quickly." A soft and tender voice sounded. As soon as the little figure ran out, he hugged the man's thigh and raised his head to speak. Gao Feng immediately covered his eyes to prevent him from looking at the dead bodies of the 2 people on the ground. His cold and silent expression instantly changed, and his voice was as gentle as if he had become a different person. "Uncle Gao knows. Go in first and don't let your younger sister come out. Tell your brother Bai that I still have something to deal with. He'll be done soon." "Okay." The little boy nodded obediently. Gao Feng turned him around and he ran back. He did not even look at Gu Yundong standing in the courtyard. Gu Yundong's expression was as if she had been struck by lightning. She had made a mistake. The target of these 2 scumbags was not her family of 4, but the 4 people in this courtyard who also had 2 children. That's right, the 2 of them had mentioned fair and tender children previously. Her own younger brother and sister were skinny to the point of showing noticeable bones and could not be described as fair and tender. Gu Yundong quickly found his position. She put away the crossbow and said to Gao Feng with a serious expression, "There's no need to thank me. I just happened to hear what they said and knew that these 2 people were not good people. They were crazy enough to want to eat 2 little children. Anyone with a conscience would not sit back and do nothing. That's why I followed behind them and thought of helping you as much as I could." Chapter 9. Search for Silver. Gao Feng nodded slightly. It was unknown if he believed her, but he took a few more glances at the crossbow in her hand. Seeing that she hid it behind her, he tactfully retracted his gaze and said, "Miss, You're so considerate. These two really deserve to die. Since these two people are already dead, shall we split the things on them equally? Gu Yundong did not mind taking things from the dead at all, especially in this world. However, Gao Feng was very disdainful. I don't need it. Miss, just take it. Gu Yundong was just asking him out of courtesy. It was obvious that this Gao guy did not lack money. As soon as he agreed, Gu Yundong squatted down and rummaged through the two dead men's money bags. Gao Feng turned around and returned to the house. Gu Yundong only paused for a moment before continuing to rummage through the clothes as if nothing had happened. The two of them really had a lot of things on them. 5 taels of silver, a jade pendant, 2 daggers, 3 small bags of sleeping pills, and other tools for committing crimes. Gu Yundong only took the silver and the jade pendant but did not take the dagger. After thinking for a while, she brought the bags of sleeping pills with her. After plundering, she was about to leave when Gao Feng came out again with a cloth bag in his hand. Thank you for your help today, Mississippi. There are some steamed buns and pancakes here. Please accept them. Gu Yundong was stunned and looked at him in surprise. Then, as she took it, she said, "I feel so awkward taking them. Actually, even if I didn't come, Big Brother's skills would be more than enough to deal with them." The corners of Gao Feng's mouth twitched. If you weren't so agile in taking these things, these words would be more convincing. Help me close the courtyard door when you go out. All right. Gu Yundong took the things and turned to leave. She did not ask how the other party would deal with the 2 corpses, nor did she ask for their names. They had just met by chance on the way to escape, and they would not have the chance to meet again in the future. Gu Yundong returned to her courtyard. The steamed buns and pancakes in her hand were already cold. She could eat them tomorrow if they were heated up again. She could add more food for everyone. The 3 people on were still sleeping in front of the fireplace, but they were curled up into a ball together. Gu Yundong frowned. It was now the time when the temperature difference between day and night was huge. It was very hot in the day, but at night, the temperature suddenly dropped by more than 10 degrees. They only had a thin blanket, so short that it could not even cover Madame Yang's feet. Even if they pressed all their clothes on top, it was still very cold. It was no wonder that they were shivering in their sleep. She subconsciously wanted to take out the blanket from her spatial storage, but on second thought, there was someone next door. It was better to be careful. Therefore, she simply took firewood and lit it at the side. Although the home's original family no longer had any food, there was a lot of dry firewood piled by the wall of the courtyard, which was convenient for her. As soon as the fire started, the temperature in the room instantly rose. Only then did the 3 of them, who had been curled up in a ball together by the fireplace, feel a little more comfortable. Their brows relaxed, and they slept especially peacefully. Gu Yundong sat at the side, but her ears were perked up. She did not expect to hear movement outside the door after only an hour. She stood up with a swish and walked out of the house. She stood again on the sauce jar and looked outside. She saw a carriage coming from the door. Gao Feng, who was in the courtyard next door, was carrying a young man into the carriage. Sensing her gaze, Gao Feng raised his head and nodded at her. "We made noise and bothered you. Are you guys leaving?" "Yes." After Gao Feng finished speaking, he also crawled into the carriage. With a shake of the reins, the carriage rumbled further and further away under the moonlight. Gu Yundong only came down from the sauce jar when she could not even see his shadow. She entered the house and sat for another 15 minutes before walking to the fireplace and carrying out the little girl sleeping in the middle, Gu Yunka. Chapter 10. The milk is delicious. The little girl's bones were soft, as if they would break if she exerted a little force. Gu Yundong did not dare to use too much strength. She hugged her exceptionally carefully. Little sister, wake up." She carried her a little further away from the fireplace before gently shaking her to wake her up. The little girl opened her eyes and looked at her in confusion. "Big sister, come. Open your mouth and drink this." "Oh." Gu Yunka did not even ask anything. She did not even see what was handed to her. She trusted her and obediently opened her small mouth and drank it. After taking a few sips, she suddenly froze. It's sweet. Drink more if you like. Gu Yundong was holding milk from her spatial storage. She had placed it on the fire to warm it up before feeding it to Gu Yunka. The little girl was too thin and weak. She was clearly 3 years old, but currently, she could not even walk steadily. Most of her day was spent sleeping. Gu Yunka was different from Gu Yunshu. No matter what, the latter was a boy and still held a slight position in old Gus' heart. He naturally ate more than Gu Yun, so he was considered to have the best physical fitness among the 4 of them. Gu Yundong had no experience in taking care of young children, but there was milk in the spatial storage. This was the most suitable thing to nourish her at the moment. After drinking more than half a bowl of milk, Gu Yun could not help but burp. It's delicious. Gu Yundong put down the bowl. When she saw her narrowing her eyes and looking like she was enjoying herself, she could not help but soften. Her tone became much gentler. Go back to sleep. Gu Yundong placed the little fellow in the middle and tucked her in. Then she sat back by the fire. The little girl was not fully awake to begin with. In just a moment, she fell asleep again. The entire house was silent. Gu Yundong could not help but look up at the wooden beam above her head. She suddenly enjoyed this environment. It was really quiet. She no longer heard the zombies' cries, nor did she need to be tense at all times and need to fight for her life. She even had family by her side. This was something she did not even dare to think about in her previous life. Felt like a dream. Dong dong. Madame Yang suddenly woke up. You're awake. Gu Yundong suddenly came back to her senses and realized that a long time had passed. Yes, I have to get up early. It was only 4 a.m. The sky was not even bright yet. However, Madame Yang had already developed a biological clock. When she was at home, she had to get up this early to cook food, feed the pigs, and to clean the courtyard. Later on the way to escape, because her brain was not very good, no one arranged for her to keep watch at night. Although she had to travel overnight sometimes, Madame Yang's waking time did not change much. Gu Yundong stood up and stretched her limbs. She took a bag from the side and handed it to her. This is for you. Madame Yang looked down at the bag and her eyes lit up. Pancakes and steamed buns? Shoo! Gu Yundong looked at the 2 children who were still sleeping. Madame Yang immediately covered her mouth and shook her head vigorously. She actually looked a little cute. The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. Eat something to fill your stomach first. Put the rest over the fire and roast it. When they wake up, give it to them. I'm going to sleep for a while. If there's any sound outside or if someone comes, remember to wake me up. Understand? Madame Yang was already awake, so she could let her be the guard. She had to take the opportunity to sleep for a few hours, or her body would not be able to take it. I do. Madame Yang agreed seriously. Only then did Gu Yundong lie down and sleep. After an unknown period of time, she woke up from the heat. Just as she narrowed her eyes, she heard Gu Yunk's tender voice. It's true. I drank it last night. It was sweet and delicious. Chapter 11. Arriving at Qingan Prefecture as she spoke, Gu Yunka licked her lips as if she was reminiscing. Then, she swallowed her saliva. Gu Yundong did not expect her to remember. At that time, Gu Yunka was in a sleepy daze and Gu Yundong thought that she did not have much of an impression. She had to think of an excuse to fool the little girl. However, before she could speak, the little girl said obediently, Brother, then what delicious food did you dream of last night? I didn't dream of anything. Little sister, when you dream of that sweet sugar water again tonight, can you share it with me? I want to go to your dream too. Gu Yunshu looked serious as he held her small hand and begged sincerely. Gu Yunka nodded hurriedly. All right, let's drink together. Madame Yang wiped her saliva. I want to drink it too. Yes, bring mother and eldest sister. Drink it all. It's really delicious. The little girl's eyes were curved into crescents. Perhaps it was because she had eaten better these 2 meals, but she was much more energetic than yesterday. It would be even better if I dreamed of meat. Gu Yundong. You really dare to think about it. She rubbed her temples and sat up. Gu Yunshu, who had heard the commotion, immediately walked over. Big sister, you're awake? What time is it? 9 a.m. Gu Yundong was a little surprised. It was actually past 9 o'clock. No wonder she felt hot under the thin blanket. Sister, why do we have pancakes and steamed buns? He had just eaten one. Smelled so good. The people next door gave it to me last night. I helped them a little and it was to thank us. Gu Yundong wiped his face and told them to pack up. It was time for them to leave. It was a little hot at this time, but there was nothing she could do. She was worried about no one keeping watch at night, so she could only keep guard herself. She would sleep when Madame Yang woke up, so they had less time to travel. Gu Yundong found another small basket in the courtyard and carried it on her back. She placed the bag of rice, steamed buns, and pancakes inside and even covered them with a blanket. In fact, she placed them in her spatial storage and would secretly took them out when she needed to. This way, the burden on Madame Yang would be less. She still carried Gu Yunka on her back in the basket. In fact, according to Gu Yundong's knowledge, Gu Yunshu was young and his bones had not grown well, and he was not suitable to walk for a long time. After a few days, when she recovered her strength, she could carry her younger sister. Her younger brother could be carried by Madame Yang for a while. The family of four set off again. Perhaps because they had something in their stomachs, their faces were no longer as gray as yesterday. Especially Gu Yunshu. The despair that seemed to be about to make him collapse yesterday could no longer be found. They walked very slowly and rested most of the time. They were not afraid with food in their hands. Gu Yundong focused on finding places with few people. It was too easy for the four of them to be targeted. But even so, the people they met looked at them with greed. Gu Yundong held a dagger in her hand. The dagger was deliberately smeared with blood. Whoever dared to approach her, she would smile bloodthirstily and ferociously at that person, scaring many tall and burly people into fleeing. There were also some who were not afraid of death. Gu Yundong did not show any mercy. After walking for a few days, they were safe and did not get robbed. Sometimes they would stay in the wilderness. At times like this, Gu Yundong would be exceptionally cautious. After a few times, Gu Yunshu realized that his eldest sister kept watch every night and did not dare to sleep. His heart ached and he felt terrible, so he insisted on switching places with her. Gu Yundong rejected him firmly and coldly. She was worried about letting such a young child guard the night. A child's sleepiness was not something he could control by himself. He would fall asleep quickly if he got sleepy. She would rather set off later and travel slower than take this risk. She only had one life. After traveling slowly for another month, they finally arrived at Qingan Prefecture. Chapter 12. Father Gu Dajiang. After arriving at Qingan Prefecture, they could finally rest. Gu Yundong looked up at the tall city gate and wiped her messy hair. She looked extremely disheveled now. Her hair was disheveled and her face was sloppy. If one did not look carefully, they would not be able to tell if she was a man or a woman. However, it was also because of this that she could hide her completely different healthy expression from others who were all pale and skinny from starvation. Eldest sister, will father be inside? Gu Yunshu stood beside her and held her hand as he asked softly. Gu Yundong was getting more and more used to their touch. She did not feel like his soft little hand would break like before. At this moment, she looked at the city wall calmly and said, "Maybe. Father will definitely be inside. I know." Gu Yunshu tightened his grip and said very firmly, "He made a promise with us. He won't go back on his word." Gu Yundong lowered her head and looked at his big head. Although his food had improved a little in the past month, she could not let him gain too much weight in a world where everyone was thin. In addition, the little guy was always worried that they would use up their food in advance, so he ate very little. He looked like he still had a big head and a small body. Seeing his tightly pursed lips, Gu Yundong could not bear to dampen his spirits. Speaking of which, her father, Gu Dajiang, was really a very farsighted person. From the day he began to escape from the drought, He had drawn a road map for all the places they might pass by and taught all the children in detail. Be it her, the 3-year-old Gu Yunke, or even Madame Yang, who did not understand at all, he would repeatedly remind them, thinking that as long as they remembered a little, they might be able to use the knowledge. Moreover, there were many families on the way to escape who would get separated in the chaos. Who knew when someone would end up being alone? When that time came, they would wait in Qingan Prefecture. They would eventually reunite. His guess was right. However, the only person who was alone had become himself. In Gu Yundong's opinion, Gu Dajiang was most likely doomed. However, the other 3 had high hopes that their seemingly omnipotent husband, would definitely escape safely. Gu Yundong felt that it was good to have a glimmer of hope. Unfortunately, communication and transportation were inconvenient now. It would be difficult to reunite the family. Let's go and ask how to enter the city. The city gate was tightly shut, but there were many people outside the city gate. There were even people who had set up tents or thatched houses outside. But with just one look, all their faces were pale and their bodies swayed weakly. Gu Yundong held her younger brother's hand while Madame Yang followed behind them with Gu Yunke on her back. The 4 of them took a few steps forward and finally stopped in front of an old man who looked a little old and kind. The old man's hands trembled as he sat on the ground and sighed as he looked in the direction of the city gate. "Sir, I want to ask when the city gate will open and how I can enter the city?" The old man turned to look at her and then at the people around her. A trace of surprise flashed in his turbid eyes. Then he shook his head and sighed. "Entering what city? No one is allowed to enter the city at all. The good people in the city came out to give porridge a few days ago. Yesterday they stopped. The city gate has never opened again. You want to enter the city?" He waved his hand. "Don't think about it. Don't think about it." Gu Yundong frowned slightly. "Thank you." She straightened up and looked at the dense crowd. She also felt that there was not much hope of entering the city. Eldest sister, eldest sister. Gu Yunshu, who was beside her, suddenly tugged at her sleeve and pointed in one direction. "Look who that is." Chapter 13. Drawing her knife, Gu Yundong looked in the direction he was pointing and saw a few familiar people. After thinking about it carefully, she found the identities of these people from her memories. Younger Aunt Gus family. Old Gu had 4 sons and 2 daughters. Among them, her father, Gu Dajiang, and older Aunt Gu were born to the original wife. The second uncle, third uncle, and fourth uncle, as well as younger Aunt Gu, were born to Madame Zhao, the second wife. Older Aunt Gu married in the neighboring village. Before escaping, Gu Dajiang had gone to look for them and asked their family to leave together. However, older Aunt Gu could not let go of her eldest daughter, who was already married, and planned to be with her eldest daughter and son-in-law. Younger Aunt Gu had married into town and her husband's family was quite well off. She even had a small shop in town to support her livelihood and her family had a donkey cart. With such conditions, she was naturally even more unwilling to be with her maternal family, who only relied on their legs to walk. What if they had to use her donkey cart along the way? What if they had no food and had to eat her family's food? Wouldn't she suffer a huge loss then? As for fourth Uncle Gu, he was only 18 years old this year and was not married yet. Moreover, when he was born, because he was too big and Mrs. Zhao was old, she had a difficult labor and almost miscarried. Moreover, she already had 2 biological sons before him, so he was not favored by Mrs. Zhao. On the other hand, Father Gu and older Aunt Gu, who had already grown up, had always taken care of him. Therefore, fourth Uncle Gu actually had a better relationship with Father Gu and the others. When Father Gu went missing on the way to escape, fourth Uncle Gu took on the responsibility of taking care of their family. Because of this, Madame Zhao disliked him even more. In order to prevent him from ruining things, Madame Zhao and the others deliberately sent fourth Uncle Gu away and took the opportunity to chase her family away. Therefore, only second uncle and third uncle were present at that time. She did not know what would happen when fourth Uncle Gu returned. However, Gu Yundong could not care too much. She still had to take care of Madame Yang and her brother and sister, so she could not spare too much energy to think about anything else. However, She did not expect to meet younger Aunt Gu at the city gate. The entire Gu family did not see her. Younger Aunt Gus's maiden name was Gu Chuyue. She probably felt too intense of a gaze and turned around and saw them. With just one look, she frowned. Then, she rolled her eyes and looked around them. Perhaps because she did not see old Gu and the others, she quickly turned her head away and pretended not to know them. Gu Yundong scoffed. She did not want to acknowledge her either. It was better to think about how to enter the city. However, she wanted to live in peace without knowing each other. But the other party did not want to do as she wished. Soon, a child walked over and stood in front of them. She raised his head slightly and said arrogantly, "My mother told you to leave quickly and not embarrass yourselves here. With your wretched appearance, it's impossible for you to be let into the city." This little girl was Gu Qiu's daughter. She was 7 years old this year. Because she lived in town, she had a sense of superiority since she was young, especially in front of Gu Yundong's family. Every time she went to the Gu family, she looked at them with disdain. She rolled her eyes and finally looked at Gu Yundong. "But if you beg me, I can consider bringing you along. But you have to follow behind me as my maid and serve me tea and water. From now on, you have to serve me well. This way, I can give you half a course steamed bun every day." It was obvious that she had added the last sentence herself. She had long wanted a maidservant to follow her. On the way, she had encountered people selling their children. Their words sounded very nice. They said that they could be beaten and scolded as you pleased as long as you gave them water to drink. However, her parents said that it was not worth it to buy servants now. On the way, they would have to take care of other people's food and drinks. They would buy a servant for her when they reached the city. Weren't they about to enter the city? There was already a perfect servant waiting for her here. Gu Yundong looked at her smug expression and silently took out the knife in her sleeve. Chapter 14. Yundong teaches her brother, "Come, repeat what you said just now. I didn't hear you clearly." Gu Yundong gestured with her knife and looked at the little girl opposite her with a smile. The latter looked at the knife in horror and her face turned pale. She could not help but swallow her saliva. What do you want to do?" "I'm not trying to do anything. Don't be nervous. Be good and say what you said just now. Don't be afraid. I won't cut you." Before she could finish speaking, the other party was so frightened that she took 2 steps back. She lost her balance and fell to the ground. However, Gu Yundong took a step towards her. The knife's light approached her like a ferocious ghost. The little girl immediately screamed and cried. She stood up in a hurry and ran away while crying. Gu Yundong shook her head. "She's as brave as a mouse. How dare she ask me to be her maid?" "Big sister, what should we do?" Gu Yunshu asked worriedly. "What do you mean?" Fulonji said that younger aunt asked her to pass the message. Younger aunt is an elder. Gu Yundong raised her eyebrows and reached out to pat his small shoulder. She said solemnly, "You treat her as your aunt, but does she treat you as her nephew? Every time she sees us, she either hits us or scolds us or mocks us. She doesn't even treat our father as her elder brother. How can she be considered our elder? Didn't father teach us that we can't repay others treating us badly with kindness? Well, treat her the way others treat us. Yunshu, remember, we don't take the initiative to provoke others. But if others dare to bully us, we can't stand still and not retaliate. Do you understand?" Gu Yunshu nodded as if he understood. After thinking for a while in a daze, he understood. Younger aunt doesn't act like an elder. Fulonji doesn't treat our parents like she is a junior. I know what to do. Gu Yundong nodded in satisfaction. Then, she saw him clench his fists and say, "The next time she comes, they'll spit on her." The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth twitched. She coughed lightly. "Well, spitting on her is too rude. We can resolve the matter in a more refined manner." Gu Yunshu blinked. "How so?" As he spoke, he saw Gu Chue walking over angrily with Fulonji. Before she could approach, she started scolding, "Gu Yundong, you motherless thing. How dare you bully my Lonji? Without your grandparents around, you don't think much of me, your aunt, right? It'll teach you the rules on your grandparents' behalf today, lest you don't even understand the most basic filial piety towards your elders. In the future, you'll embarrass the Gu family and become a joke if word gets out. As Gu Qiuyue spoke, she swung her hand and was about to slap Gu Yundong's face. However, halfway through, her hand stopped. She looked at the dagger blocking her way and shivered. She couldn't hit no matter what. Gu Yundong, do you know whose blood this is? Gu Yundong waved the dagger in his hand. Yesterday, the blood on it was still bright red. Today, it has turned dark, and the smell of blood is not very strong. But I think someone who is not blind can still see it, right? What do you want to do? I don't want to do anything. I just feel that there are so many self-righteous fools in this world. Yesterday, I met 2 of them. Not only did they want to snatch my things, but they also wanted to drag my sister and brother away to sell them. I took out this dagger at that time and aimed it at someone's neck. Chapter 15. Younger aunt is nothing, Gu Chua screamed and looked at Gu Yundong as if she did not know her. She took a deep breath. You're crazy. I'm your aunt. In this world, even one's own son can't compare to half a bag of food. Younger aunt, you're nothing. Gu Yundong said coldly and approached her step by step. The dagger was also getting closer. Gu Qiuyue could smell the blood on the dagger. She hurriedly took a few steps back and tightened her grip on her daughter's hand. Her heart was beating rapidly. This is the city gate. Everyone is watching. If you commit murder, you won't be able to escape. Let me tell you, as long as you apologize to Lanji and apologize properly, as long as Lanji forgives you, today's matter will be over. Gu Yundong looked around. There were indeed many people looking at them, but their eyes were numb as they watched the farce without moving. She felt that Gu Qiuyue was too naive. Then do you want to try? Or ask Fu Lanji if she dares to make me apologize. Fu Lanji met her cold gaze and immediately shook her head like a rattle drum. Gu Qiuyue was furious. She wanted to go forward and give Gu Yundong a few vicious slaps. However, she did not dare to. Gu Yundong's gaze was too terrifying. In the end, she could not help but shout fiercely, I won't argue with you. If you don't take your elders seriously, I won't care if you live or die in the future. When the time comes, don't beg me if you want to enter the city. Lunatic, you're just like your mother. Lanji, let's go. The 2 of them came in a hurry but stumbled back. After walking far away, Gu Chua cursed. Little b asterisk tzh, just you wait. Do you really think I can't deal with you? You'll see how long you can protect yourself with 3 burdens by your side. You better not let me find any opportunities. When the time comes, it'll teach you a lesson. I don't believe that you can come here safely by yourself. I don't know how many men you've slept with already, little whore. Fu Lanji finally stopped crying. Mother, why aren't they with Grandpa and the others? They must have been chased out. Gu Qiuyue sneered. She knew her parents too well. Serves them right. The 2 of them gradually disappeared into the distance. Gu Yundong put away her dagger and looked at the people around her. She did not know if it was because of the blood on her dagger or if it was because of the unfriendly look in her eyes, but in short, a few people who were tempted to go forward and talk to her had given up. This Gu Qiuyue was still somewhat useful. It's not easy for a young lady. The old man, who had been watching from the beginning to the end, could not help but sigh. But in this case, you don't even have a relative who can help you. You have to be careful. Sir, do you think that they will help us if I apologize to them or beg for mercy or serve them tea? Gu Yundong smiled and did not mind. The old man was stunned for a moment. That's true. After scaring younger Aunt Gu and her daughter away, Gu Yundong could finally calm down and begin to observe the large number of refugees outside the city gate. There were too many people and the road was packed. They walked slowly and were already standing at the periphery. However, there were still many refugees coming this way on the road behind them. Gu Yundong glanced around and frowned when she saw people gathered in 2s and 3s not far away. Something was wrong. Something was very wrong. Chapter 16. Chaos will happen. Gu Yunshu grabbed her hand. Eldest sister. Has father already entered the city? I'm not too sure. I'll ask around first. Gu Yundong found a plot of land at the side and brought them to sit down and rest. When the fatigue passed, she began to ask about Father Gus' whereabouts. She did not dare to leave Madame Yang and the others alone, so she simply brought them along. There were too many people at the city gate. It was not easy to find one person. In particular, many people looked at them as if they were about to pounce on them and tear them apart at any moment. Gu Yundong did not dare to relax at all. She kept holding the dagger in her hand. However, after walking through more than half of the refugee area, there was no gain at all. Not to mention Father Gu, even old Gu and the others seemed to have disappeared. Gu Yunka, who was hanging in the basket in front of Madame Yang, was already so hungry that her stomach was rumbling. After holding it in for a long time, she finally couldn't help but poke out half of her head. Big sister, I'm hungry. Before Gu Yundong could speak, Gu Yunshu had already comforted her. Little sister, we don't have anything to eat, so we have to find father quickly. Perhaps he has something to eat. Really? Gu Yunka swallowed, and her eyes lit up slightly. Gu Yunshu nodded heavily. Yes, so can you bear with it? Their conversation was neither loud nor soft, and the people nearby could hear it. Gu Yundong raised her eyebrows in surprise. She patted her brother's head and said in a low voice, "Great job." Of course, there was still food, but there were so many pairs of eyes watching. If they took it out, it would be snatched away. She was also very surprised that the little guy would answer like this. Gu Yunshu was still a little nervous. He was afraid that he would say something wrong, and he even lied to his sister. However, he did not expect his eldest sister to praise him. He immediately straightened his chest excitedly. I understand. Along the way, he had been watching how Big Sister dealt with those people with ill intentions. He actually wanted to help Big Sister share the burden, but he was afraid that he would cause trouble if he did something wrong. So he only watched and did not say anything. He had subconsciously replied just now, but he did not expect himself to be right. Gu Yunshu was instantly delighted. He did not feel bitter or tired at all. Next, when Gun Yundong asked about Father Gus' whereabouts, occasionally he would interject with a few questions. Unfortunately, even when it was almost dark, he did not find any useful clues. It was obvious that Father Gu was either in the city or he hadn't arrived yet. The worst outcome would be that he was already dead. Gu Yunshu's happy expression disappeared, and his mood became gloomy. Beside him, Gu Yundong's expression was also much more solemn. As expected, something was wrong. After walking around, she realized that many young and strong men were gathered in twos and threes. Their eyes were shining with a certain determined madness. This phenomenon was very dangerous. The family of four walked back to the resting area. The old man from before asked with concern, "Is there any news?" "Not yet." The old man sighed. "In this world, it's too difficult to find someone. But don't be discouraged. You'll find him eventually." Okay. Gu Yundong put down Madame Yang's basket. Only then did she have the time to take a sip of water from the bamboo tube. She turned around and handed the bamboo tube to Gu Yunshu. She hesitated for a moment before saying, "Sir, I'm afraid it's not going to be peaceful here." "I know." The old man smiled bitterly. "The city gate is closed, and no one comes out to provide porridge. There are more and more people, and everyone has nothing to eat. We're forced into a corner and we're about to lose our lives. How can we not be in chaos?" Gu Yundong pursed her lips. She also had a feeling that in the next 2 days, the refugees would think of ways to break into the city gate. At that time, the city would be in chaos. Chapter 17. Have to leave here, sir. Aren't you leaving? Gu Yundong had originally planned to think of a way to enter the city, but now it seemed that it would not work. She might have the ability to protect herself alone, but Gu Yunshu and the other two beside her did not have the ability to protect themselves. It seemed that she could only wait outside the city gate for 2 days at most. If there was still no news of Father Gu, she would have to leave. The old man looked up at the sky. I want to leave too, but I ran out of food on the way here. 2 days ago, I still had porridge to eat. Today, I don't know if my son can find any wild vegetables. If he can't, I can only starve. It doesn't matter. Anyway, that old woman of mine has left already. I'm old and won't live for long. It's not a big deal even if there is chaos. Only then did Gu Yundong learn that this old man's family had escaped from their hometown. On the way, his wife and daughter-in-law had starved to death in order to save them a mouthful of food. Now only the old man, his son, and his 16-year-old grandson were left. Now his son and grandson were looking for food outside. However, it was already so late and they had yet to return. He did not know if they had found anything. Girl, if you can leave, leave. Don't think that so many people here are all just waiting for death. Most of them are looking forward to this chaos. As long as the city is in chaos and the city gate opens, they can enter the city. They might even have food to eat and won't starve to death. They were at the end of their rope. Even if they knew that this was a matter of possibly losing their heads, they still wanted to give it a try. Gu Yundong fell silent. After a while, she led Madame Yang and the other two to the side and sat down. After a while, she turned her head and met Gu Yunshu's puzzled gaze. She said softly, Yunshu, let's wait another day. Regardless of whether we hear from father or not, we have to leave then. Is it because a fight is about to break out here? He had heard the old man's words. That's right. Gu Yunshu lowered his head with a lonely expression. He wiped his eyes fiercely with the back of his hand. After a while, he said in a choked voice, listen to big sister. You're a good boy. I know we're still young and can't run fast. If we fight, we'll drag eldest sister down. Then, let's wait until there's no more fighting here before looking for father. Okay? Gu Yunshu was really very sensible. Gu Yundong had actually seen many brats before. For example, Fulanji was a few years older than Gu Yunshu, but she had a bad personality. Gu Yundong felt really awkward about such a sensible and obedient child. She felt like spoiling him. This kind of emotion had never happened before to her, but during this period of time, after interacting with the Gu siblings, it often appeared and occupied her heart. These two children were growing on her. Gu Yundong took a deep breath and nodded. All right, I promise you. Gu Yunshu tried his best to smile. I'll grow up quickly. Eldest sister. Gu Yunka was still young. She felt that eldest sister and second brother's explanation was too complicated. She did not understand. She only tilted her head and asked curiously, You're not looking for father anymore? But Kiki's stomach is so hungry. Didn't they say that they could eat after finding their father? Gu Yundong pinched her tender face. This little thing was a little foodie. She could eat anything that was given to her. In her dreams at night, the content was all about food. It was also strange. In the past, when she was at the Gu family, Madame Zhao had never given her a full meal. How could she hold back and not say anything? Gu Yundong took another bamboo tube at the side, opened the lid, and brought it to Gu Yunk's mouth. Half of her body blocked others' vision. If you're hungry, drink some water. Tomorrow, eldest sister will think of a way to find food. Saya. Although she called it water, it was actually porridge in the bamboo tube. There were not many rice grains, but at least it could fill one's stomach. She added white sugar to the porridge, and the little girl immediately smiled after drinking it. Chapter 18. The bamboo basket is heavy. There was not much porridge in the bamboo tube. It was only enough for everyone to drink 2 mouthfuls, but at least it was enough to put something in their stomachs. The sky was already completely dark. As usual, Gu Yundong sat at the side and guarded everyone. There were too many people at the city gate, so she did not dare to let her guard down. The night was still illuminated by the faint flames. There were also many faint sounds. In the distance, there were faint cries. In this place, there were still people who starved to death and worked themselves to death every day. There were also robberies and fights. No wonder it was chaotic. If the magistrate officials in the city did not think of a way to solve the problem, the small chaos would eventually cause a huge disaster. Girl! Just as she was thinking, A familiar voice suddenly sounded in her ear. Gu Yundong's expression suddenly tightened. She saw a staggering figure walking over. When he got closer, she saw that it was the old man surnamed Yu who had spoken to her previously. Gu Yundong quickly stood up. "Sir, what's the matter?" "Girl." Old man Yu walked closer and lowered his voice. He said anxiously, "If you can leave, leave quickly. My son and grandson are back. They just brought back news that those people might attack tomorrow morning. I don't know what they will do. When the time comes, you won't be able to escape with your younger siblings." Gu Yundong was stunned. She felt that it might be chaotic in the next 2 days, but she did not expect it to happen so quickly. "What about you, sir?" Old man Yu smiled bitterly. "My son said that we shouldn't get involved in such matters. When the time comes, we'll hide far away. As for the future, we'll take it one step at a time. All right, girl, leave quickly. Don't delay." Gu Yundong nodded and squatted down to wake Madame Yang up. She directly asked Madame Yang to carry Gu Yunshu while she carried Gu Yunka. They did not have many things. They basically placed them in the baskets on their backs and could leave after taking them. Gu Yundong also realized that a few families were quietly preparing to leave not far away. It seemed that they had received the news and did not want to get involved. Madame Yang was still in a daze, but at least she was obedient. When her daughter asked her to leave, she immediately followed. The few of them passed by the place where old man Yu was resting. Gu Yundong saw his equally skinny son and grandson. The two of them were quite friendly to her and nodded slightly. Gu Yundong also nodded. However, she paused when she reached the place where they had placed their bamboo baskets before leaving. "Old man, you sent them off. This place is close to Wanqing province. Be careful on the way. Take care too." After a pause, she added, "Go back and take a look at your bamboo basket." Gu Yundong's movements were light, but her footsteps were hurried. However, she did head towards the Wanqing province that old man Yu had mentioned. When eldest master Yu could not see her, she turned around and walked in the direction of Xuanhe province, which was a little further away. If this place was in chaos, many people would definitely escape to Wanqing province. The chaos here might even affect the other side. She had food on hand. No matter where she went, she would not starve to death on the way. It was safer to go to a safer place. Xuanhe Prefecture was her first choice at the moment. Old man Yu waited until they could no longer be seen before turning around to go back. His son came over and helped him sit down. "Is that family the people father mentioned earlier? I really can't tell that they have the ability to escape to this place. That girl is ruthless. I admire her for her strength, just like when your mother was young." Old man Yu wiped his eyes and chuckled. "Let's go and hide in the mountains." "Okay." Old man Yes' son asked his own son to support his father while he carried the bamboo basket. Uncle Yu was stunned that he did not carry it on his back successfully the first time. Strange. Why is this bamboo basket so heavy? Chapter 19. Selling Gu Yundong and her siblings, it got much heavier? Old man Yu suddenly stopped in his tracks and quickly walked to Uncle Yes' side. "By the way, before that girl left, she said that she wanted me to take a look at the bamboo basket. Do you want to take a look?" Old man Yu and his son looked at each other. They put down the bamboo basket and opened a piece of clothing covering it. In the next moment, they saw an unfamiliar cloth bag placed inside. Old man Yu had a guess in his heart. He squeezed past his dilly-dallying son and tore open the cloth bag. He saw that the bag was filled with yams and potatoes. The three of them sucked in a breath of cold air. Old man Yu even closed the cloth bag and covered it with his original clothes while trembling. "Father!" Uncle Yu swallowed hard. "This is from that girl." "Shoo!" Old man Yu quickly looked around. When he saw that no one was paying attention, he heaved a sigh of relief. "This girl is repaying me for sending her news out of kindness. She distinguishes between gratitude and grudges. It's fine if we accept it. Don't make a fuss. If there's a chance in the future, we'll thank her again." The father and son nodded repeatedly, and their eyes lit up. "Father, now that we have these, we can go to Wanqing province. Yes, to Wanqing province. Old man, you had a smile on his face. He no longer had the gloomy expression from before. Although this food could only last for 7 to 8 days, there would always be food to be found on the way to Wanqing province. The three of them quickly confirmed the route and began to set off in the direction of Wanqing province. However, they all had a question in their hearts. When did that girl stuff the food into their bamboo basket? Gu Yundong and the Yu family's grandfather, son, and grandson left the city gate one after another. Just as they left, a few sneaky men quietly came to the place where Gu Yundong had rested. However, there was no one there anymore. The few of them searched around but could not find anyone. One of them grabbed a young man's collar. "Where is he? Didn't you say that your nephew and niece are here?" The young man's name was Fu Ming, and he was Gu Qiu's husband. At this moment, he also had a look of anger on his face. However, when he faced the fierce man, he immediately said obsequiously, "Master Qian, I'm not lying to you. They were really here. My little niece is only 3 years old, and my little nephew is only 5 years old. They're both good-looking. You can bring them back and train them well. They'll definitely be able to help you earn money in the future. The older one is 13 years old and has already grown up. Let's look around nearby some more. They'll definitely be here." Master Qian and the others were all hired thugs from the Qin Tower's Chu Pavilion in the city. They knew that there were many refugees outside the city recently, and there were also many people selling their children. Some people only needed a few sweet potatoes to push their biological children away. Master Qian had already found many boys and girls. They were all good-looking and would be of great use in the future if they were nurtured well in the pavilion. After Fu Ming found out about this person, he listened to Gu Qiu and thought of selling his nephew and niece so that Master Qian could bring his family into the city. His nephew and nieces were all good-looking, and there were 3 of them. They were enough. Master Qian said that they had to have a clear background. If they didn't have a backer, it would be best if they came out of a poor ditch and were the type who could die without anyone caring. They didn't want to have endless trouble in the future. Wouldn't Gu Yundong and her brother and sister fit the bill perfectly? So what if Gu Yundong had a dagger in her hand? That was just to scare people. When she met people like Master Qian, she could only be at the mercy of others. But now, where was she? Could it be that she had received the news in advance? As he was thinking, he saw Gu Qiu running over hurriedly. "I saw Gu Yundong and the rest walking in that direction. Hurry up and chase after them." Chapter 20. The ruthless Master Qian. When Gu Yundong and the others turned around to go to Shuanhe province, Gu Qiu happened to see them. She immediately went to look for her husband, Fu Ming, and Master Qian. She hurriedly pointed in the direction. Seeing that they had chased after Gu Yundong, she smiled sinisterly. "I told you not to be smug. Do you think a thin brat like you can escape from Master Qian's hands? Just you wait. They'll make you come back and kowtow and admit your mistake." Bah! Gu Yundong had not walked very far. After all, she was carrying a child on her back and it was the middle of the night. It was inevitable that she would walk slower. Fortunately, not many people took this path. Basically, they all went to the closer Wanqing prefecture. Shuanhe prefecture was too far away. The people who chose this path definitely had better conditions. Most of them still had transportation tools from before. Gu Yundong and the others were the only ones who walked over on foot. She had to check later if there were any cars in the spatial storage that they could use. But because of this, when she heard footsteps running over from behind, Gu Yundong's first instinct was to tense up and cautiously hide behind a nearby slope with Madame Yang. Just as they hid themselves, Master Qian, Fu Ming, and the others arrived. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Under the moonlight, 5 figures swayed, and they all seemed to be men. Gu Yundong instantly held his breath. The next moment, he heard one of the men's impatient voices. "Didn't you say that there was someone's shadow ahead? Where is it? There's not even a ghost shadow." "Master Qian, don't be anxious. I didn't see wrongly just now. They must have heard our footsteps and hid. Think about it. There are only 4 of them and 2 of them are babies still drinking milk. They can't walk fast at all. Chiyue also said that they just left not long ago. They must be nearby. We can find them if we look. Humph, you'd better find your nephews and nieces. Otherwise, they'll use your daughter instead. Don't worry, Master Qian. I promise they won't be able to escape. At first, Gu Yundong only thought that Fu Ming's voice was familiar and could not remember it. When she heard the word Chue, she instantly remembered. Wasn't this her uncle-in-law's voice? As expected, this couple was not good people. Previously, they did not succeed in finding trouble, but now, they brought helpers. This Master Qian, Gu Yundong had also about him during the day, as when she was asking about Gu Dajiang's whereabouts, she was also collecting all kinds of information in the vicinity. She knew that there was a person called Master Qian at the city gate who could exchange food for beautiful children, both boys and girls. As long as someone caught his eye, he could even think of a way to bring others into the city. This Master Qian was quite famous and ruthless. Chapter 21. Sowing discord. As soon as Master Qian finished speaking, Gu Yundong had already quietly bypassed the hiding place of Madame Yang and the other 2 and revealed herself from another direction. You're Qian-san. Master Qian was stunned. He looked with surprise at the girl who spoke. Fu Ming's eyes lit up as he said excitedly, Master Qian, this is my eldest niece. However, in the next moment, he frowned and asked curiously, Yundong, where's your younger brother and sister? Uncle-in-law, don't interrupt. Let me confirm his identity first. As she spoke, Gu Yundong looked at Master Qian. Are you Qian-san? Fu Ming was confused. Confirm? What identity? Qian-san did not quite understand what she meant. So what if I am? That's good. Gu Yundong nodded and ran to Fu Ming's side. She pulled him back 2 steps. Uncle, your mission is completed. Stay away so that you won't be hurt. These words were simply baffling. Fu Ming was completely dumbfounded. No, Yundong, what are you talking about? Why are you pulling me? All right, uncle, don't worry. I won't snatch your credit. You lured Qian-san and the others here. You've contributed the most and will receive the most food. I know what to do. Step back first. Otherwise, what if the swords hurt you? Lured? These words immediately made Qian-san cautious. He suddenly looked up at Fu Ming and realized that Fu Ming was actually 2 meters away from him. Fu Ming, what do you mean? What do you mean by luring us here? Gu Yundong took another big step back and looked arrogant and unafraid of death. She laughed at Qian-san. You don't know, do you? Qian-san, you've been tricked. Haha, you killed Uncle Wang's daughter. He came to take revenge on you. He brought people to ambush here. As long as my uncle lures you here, he will give us a bag of food and promise to help us enter the city. Qian-san's expression changed drastically. Although he did not know who the Uncle Wang she was talking about was, he had killed many people. Fu Ming, you're courting death. He did not have time to judge if Gu Yundong was telling the truth. He immediately waved at his 3 subordinates. Capture them. Gu Yundong turned around and ran. As she ran, she shouted at a dark corner, Uncle Wang, hurry up and do it. When she shouted, Qian-san and the others subconsciously stopped in their tracks and turned to look for the so-called Uncle Wang. The corners of Gu Yundong's mouth curled up slightly. She took this opportunity to turn around abruptly. The crossbow bolt hidden in her sleeve shot out with a whoosh and hit Qian-san's forehead. Ha! Qian-san made a sound and fell straight back. Ah! Fu Ming screamed and looked at Master Qian, who was lying on the ground with his eyes wide open in shock. He did not even dare to breathe. The others were also stunned. In the next moment, another crossbow bolt shot over, but this time it missed. However, even so, the other 3 thugs were so frightened that they panicked, especially when they saw their boss die with grievances. They immediately couldn't care less and scrambled away. Fu Ming also shouted and ran. He was no longer in the mood to catch Gu Yundong. Gu Yundong pursed her lips. Seeing that their footsteps had disappeared, she picked up the crossbow on the ground. The position was not good, and the crossbow bolt could only hit the ground to deter them. She did not need to care about Fu Ming's family. If Chen San died, his 3 subordinates would not let them off. Gu Yundong sneered and began to plunder Chen San's belongings. This person did not bring anything with him. She only found a money bag from him. There were 20 taels of silver inside. Very well, the money was hers now. Gu Yundong put it away in satisfaction. When she got up again, she heard a commotion at the city gate. As expected, they started fighting. Chapter 22. Pushcart. Gu Yundong returned to where Madame Yang and the others were hiding. She carried the basket that was on the ground. Let's go. There will be more people in a while. There was a fight at the city gate. Some people who did not want to get involved would definitely leave. Gu Yunka had already woken up. The little girl rubbed her eyes and said in a low voice, "Elder sister, I'm hungry." Gu Yundong held her forehead and took out a few small rice balls the size of meatballs from the cloth bag. After giving them to her, she stuffed them into Gu Yunshu and Madame Yang's hands and ate to herself. This small rice ball was made before they set off this morning. It was still wrapped in a little pickled vegetables. There was oil and salt in the pickled vegetables, and it could also make the taste of the rice ball delicious. It was the most suitable food to fill one's stomach on the way to escape. Previously, there were too many people at the city gate and it was not convenient to take them out. Now, it was just enough to fill their stomachs. After eating, Gu Yundong set off with the 3 of them. As expected, the road to Shuanha province was much calmer than the previous road. There were still people fleeing, but their mental state was clearly different. Most of the people had ox carts, donkey carts, and carriages. They barely bumped into their peers on the road. Naturally, no one would come looking for Gu Yundong and the others who looked very down and out. After walking for a few days, Gu Yundong finally found a pushcart in her spatial storage. This was what she had obtained when she passed by a small village to collect supplies during the apocalypse. At that time, there were several bags of corn kernels piled on the pushcart. She had even put the corn kernels and the cart into her space. Later on, the corn kernels were unloaded, but the pushcart had been piled in the corner by her. Now it was useful. Fortunately, the 2 wheels of this pushcart were made of wood and would not attract too much attention. Gu Yundong found an opportunity and said to Madame Yang, "You guys rest here for a while. I'll go there to relieve myself." She ran into the grass that was half the height of a person. When she came out again, there was already a pushcart behind her. Gu Yunshu was stunned. "Sister, where did this come from?" "I found it in the grass over there. Someone might have abandoned it and thrown it there," Gu Yundong said to Gu Yunka and Madame Yang, who were also curious. "All of you come up. They'll see if I can pull you up." The pushcart was relatively long. If someone sat at the back, the person pulling the cart would feel that the load was much lighter. What's more, they were walking on the official road now. It was easier to walk on the flat road. Madame Yang carried Gu Yunshu and Gu Yunka up. She hesitated for a moment before going up carefully. Gu Yundong was quite strong now. She pressed the front of the cart down, grabbed 2 handles and walked forward. It was a little difficult at first, but slowly, it did not require much strength. The wheels would also roll forward according to inertia. Gu Yunshu twisted his body happily. "That's great. With this cart, mother and eldest sister won't have to work so hard to carry me and little sister. I can lie down." Although Gu Yunka was small, she had been curled up in the basket on her back all this time and could not stretch her limbs. She felt very uncomfortable. Madame Yang touched the guardrails on both sides of the pushcart. There was also a barrier at the back of the car to prevent it from falling. Gu Yundong turned to look at the 3 of them, and the corners of her mouth subconsciously curled up. With the pushcart, their speed was indeed much faster. Gu Yundong and Madame Yang would switch shifts. After Gu Yundong kept watch at night, she could also sleep in the cart during the day the next day, saving a lot of time. Hence, when they arrived at the city gate of Shuanha province, it was less than a month later. This was greatly beyond Gu Yundong's expectations. Chapter 23. Conditions to enter the city. There were also many people outside the city gate of Xuanhe Prefecture. However, unlike Qingan Prefecture, the people outside the city gate were in a much better state. Moreover, there were 2 sheds not far away. The servants of the big families in the city were giving free porridge. In order not to be unconventional, Gu Yundong settled Madame Yang and the others not far away. She took 2 bowls and asked for 2 bowls of porridge. At the same time, she asked about the situation here. However, an auntie said to her, "It's not easy for you to enter the city. I heard that the magistrate is worried that too many refugees entering the city will cause chaos, so you have to have certain conditions to enter the city." "What conditions?" A girl around her age sized her up and laughed. "It's useless even if I say it. You definitely won't be able to meet the conditions." Gu Yundong ignored her and asked the aunt, "Go ahead." They said that not only does one have to have a household registration certificate to enter the city, but every person also has to pay 5 taels of silver. 5 taels. F*ck, this was daylight robbery. If one person was 5 taels, wouldn't the 4 of them need 20 taels? They did have a household registration certificate. Her father, Gu Dajiang, had asked them to bring it with them. The girl beside her saw her surprised expression and immediately laughed. "I told you it was useless to tell you. Why are you still asking? From the looks of it, you're not even as good as me. It's already good enough if you have 5 copper coins on you. You should obediently find a place outside and wait for a kind person to give you some food. What's the point?" Gu Yundong suddenly turned his head to look at her. "What's wrong with you? No one is paying attention to you, but you're still trying to make your presence known. Do I know you? Are we very close?" "You?" Gu Yundong turned around and left. That girl was furious. "Why are you so arrogant? Just you wait. If you can't enter the city, you'll still have to spend the night here." Gu Yundong had already walked to Madame Yang and the other 2. She handed over the porridge in her hand. "Drink this first. We'll enter the city later." The 4 of them obediently finished 2 bowls of porridge. The porridge dispensers had already packed up and entered the city. After the city gate quietened down a little, she got up and pulled the pushcart to bring the 3 of them to the city gate. There were many soldiers guarding the city gate. They were afraid that something would go wrong. These people all had murderous expressions and the swords in their hands were cold. Gu Yundong had been observing just now and realized that the young soldier on the left had a very good attitude. When the families who were giving porridge entered the city, he even reached out to help them. She walked up to him and handed over the household registration certificate in her hand. The commotion on her side quickly attracted the other refugees who were still at the city gate, especially the girl who had been mocking her and looking at her. Seeing this, she sneered. The soldier also looked at Gu Yundong in surprise. He sized up her clothes and expression, then looked at her household registration certificate. Then, he said, "Do you know the rules for entering the city? 5 taels per person, right?" The soldier nodded. "There are 4 of you, so it's a total of 20 taels. "I have it." Gu Yundong wanted to thank Qian San. He kindly gave her 20 taels of silver. Coupled with the 5 taels of silver she had plundered previously, she should be able to last for a few days after entering the city and wait for her to find a way to earn money. Seeing Gu Yundong take out 20 taels of silver, the soldier looked at her in surprise. The girl behind looked even more incredulous. Wasn't she poor? Why did she have so much money? Chapter 24. Renting a house. Gu Yundong was actually very heartbroken. 20 taels of silver was a huge sum of money for her now. Now, they were just entering the city gate, but they actually had to hand them all over. This was simply robbery. The soldier took the silver and looked at her again. "Follow me." He turned around and brought her to the side to register. When everything was done, Gu Yundong stood at the city gate before she slowly exhaled. Madame Yang and the other 2 who were standing beside her also imitated her and exhaled in unison. Their relieved expressions were exactly the same, making the soldier who had been standing beside them unable to help but laugh. Only when Gu Yundong looked over did he cough lightly and advise her, Remember to keep a low profile after entering the city. Don't get into conflicts with anyone. There are many refugees in the city now. If you cause trouble, they will definitely arrest you first. There's nothing we can do about it. Actually, he was not considered a soldier. His surname was Nye, and the prefectural governor was his uncle. For some reason, he was temporarily summoned here to help guard the city gate for 2 days. A few days ago, the prefectural governor had received news that there was a riot in Qingan Prefecture. Refugees had broken into the city to burn, kill, and plunder. They had killed 2 officials, and the city asked for reinforcements. Commander Zhao personally led the troops to Qingan Prefecture City to quell the chaos. This news spread like wildfire in their Shuanhe Prefecture, causing the citizens in the city to not have a good impression of the refugees. Only then did the prefectural governor set the conditions for each person to enter the city to pay 5 taels per person. It was not to the extent of blocking all the refugees outside, which would cause others to see no hope and take a risk. However, at the same time, he filtered out the group of refugees who had poor conditions and would cause a burden in the city. He also persuaded the big families in the city to go out of the city to provide porridge to stabilize the refugees. This method was quite effective. Just look at the people outside the city. They did not cause trouble and did not add much burden for the city. Gu Yundong only nodded when she heard that. Naturally, she would not take the initiative to cause trouble. However, if others thought that they, with only children and a mother, were easy to bully, they could not blame her. However, she was not familiar with the city yet. This soldier seemed to be quite easy to talk to, so she asked a few more questions. Do you know which inn in the city is cheap and safe? Nyatsong looked at her strangely. She actually wanted to stay in an inn? She still had money on her? He couldn't tell. Except, don't even think about an inn. Even the most remote place is probably full now. Then are there houses for rent? Nyatsong smiled. Of course, but a refugee injured someone not long ago. Everyone is very vigilant, so... Gu Yundong understood. People would not want to rent to refugees like her. That would be difficult. She thought that she could finally rest after entering the city. She did not expect that there was not even a place to sleep. She might as well stay outside the city then. Gu Yunshu and Gu Yunka looked up at her. The 2 little guys also looked worried. For some reason, Nyatsong couldn't help but want to laugh when he saw them. After hesitating for a while, he finally said, "If you really want to find a place to stay, I have a place here. My aunt's house has an empty room. She lives alone. Coincidentally, you don't have an adult man, so it's convenient for you to stay there. It's just that the rent is a little expensive, and you have to deposit your household registration certificate with me. Is that okay?" Chapter 25. 3 taels a month. Gu Yundong's eyes lit up. Sure, why not? Moreover, they were young and weak. It was actually very difficult to choose a place to stay. It was not safe for a family that was too complicated, especially if the landlord had an adult man at home. She had to worry that Madame Yang would be taken advantage of. How much is the rent? 3 taels a month. Hiss, Gu Yundong gasped. 1 room. 3 taels a month? The people in this city were all robbers, right? Nyatsong also knew that the rent was a little expensive. Under normal circumstances, it would only be about 1 tael. Still, wasn't this an extraordinary period? There's nothing I can do about it. Actually, if it weren't for the fact that you guys don't have any adult men, I wouldn't have pulled this string for you. I have to think for my aunt's sake. I can't let her be in danger, right? The rent is a little expensive, but the location is not bad. It's also close to my house, so it's convenient to go out. Nyatsong said, "Besides, you can rest assured. If you accept, I can bring you to the government office to sign this lease. I won't cheat you." Gu Yundong did not suspect that Nyatsong would cheat her. The details indicated his character. Nyatsong looked young, but his actions were very well-mannered. It was obvious that he had learned the rules properly since he was young. Moreover, he was wearing soldier's clothes outside, but his shoes were different from ordinary soldier's shoes. His family did not lack money, especially when she was registering just now. She vaguely heard the registration officer call him young Master Nye. So, let's go to the government office to sign the lease. In fact, ordinary rentals did not need to go to the government office. It was not like they were transferring the ownership. This was obviously Nye Tsong's suggestion to reassure her. All right, wait a moment. He'll give some instructions and he'll be right there. After Nye Tsong handed over his shift, he led Gu Yundong's family of 4 towards the government office. On the way, he learned about Gu Yundong's background. He learned that her father had gone missing and that she was chased out by her grandfather, grandmother, uncle, and aunt. He learned that she only had a little money on her and that she had helped others on the way to escape. A kind-hearted person had given the money to her and he sympathized with her for a moment. Gu Yundong also secretly found out Nye Tsong's background and felt much more at ease. She felt that it was necessary to befriend such a person. He would definitely be useful in the future. She couldn't spend 3 taels of silver for nothing. They walked to the entrance of the government office. Nye Tsong asked Gu Yundong to place the pushcart outside. Yes, Gu Yundong had dragged a pushcart all the way here. This pushcart was not cheap here. Chapter 26. Young man, this person gave her a sense of déjà vu. Gu Yundong frowned slightly and immediately reacted. Yes, this person was very much like herself in the apocalypse. She did not care about anything. Her eyes were indifferent, as if there was no one or thing in the world that could move her heart. She felt like she was living day by day. However, that was because the apocalypse she lived in left her with no hope. What about the man in front of her? Before she could think too much, the constable who had been kicked down had already gotten up. With a whoosh, he pulled out the sword at his waist and was about to slash at that person. The sword seemed icy cold. The little girl in Gu Yundong's arms quickly hugged her neck and buried her head in Gu Yundong's arms. Seeing this, Nye Tsong thought that she was afraid and immediately stopped the constable. Stop! The constable barely stopped in time and turned around. When he saw that it was him, he hurriedly went forward and smiled obsequiously. Young Master Nye, it's you. What are you doing? Why are you fighting and killing at the entrance of the government office? How unseemly is that? The constable immediately explained indignantly. Sigh, young Master Nye, it's not that I want to attack him. It's just that this person has committed a heinous crime and still resisted arrest. Look, he actually dared to kick me just now. What did he do? Someone came to report that this person is the leader of the refugees in Qingan Prefecture. We brought him back for interrogation. Nye Tsong was stunned. There was a riot in Qingan Prefecture, and Commander Zhao had led his troops to support the suppression. It was said that the leader who had broken into the local government office and killed the prefectural governor had not been caught. It was very likely that he had fled to the nearby prefecture city. Recently, their Xuanhe prefecture had also been heavily guarded. They patrolled day and night, afraid that this person would cause trouble here. However, according to his understanding, the leader was a middle-aged man in his 30s or 40s, and the person in front of him looked to be a youth who was not even 20 years old. As expected, the young man denied it expressionlessly. "I'm not him," the constable chuckled. "You're not him? Look at the portrait on this warrant. This is you." He held a piece of paper with a portrait of a person on it. He stretched it out and almost hit the young man's face. Nye Tsong also took it and looked at it. He could not help but sigh secretly. Gu Yundong glanced at it and the corners of her mouth twitched. Weren't the character drawings of this era too abstract? It would be strange if they could catch the criminal with such an arrest warrant. However, even if this person was that realistic, he was still miles away from the young man in front of him. These 2 constables were obviously lying through their teeth and making things difficult for the youth. Gu Yundong knew that many constables nowadays relied on extortion to survive, but it was also very chilling to be so blatant about it. Nye Tsong frowned as well. He glanced at the young man and threw the wanted order at the constable's face. "How is it similar? Hurry up and let him go. If we arrest people randomly like you, won't we let the real murderer off?" The constable was a little unhappy. "But we received a report." Do you believe anyone who comes to report the case? I think the person who should be arrested the most is the person who reported the case. He even dares to lie through his teeth with a wanted order. It's a waste of time to come to the government office to report a case like this. He's simply detestable. Hurry up and let him go. Nyatsong's identity obviously made the two constables very afraid. After the two of them looked at each other, they finally untied the young man unwillingly. Go, hurry and get out of here. The young man pursed his lips, glanced at Nyatsong, and turned to leave. From the beginning to the end, he did not say much. In the end, he did not even say thanks. Chapter 27. Tying someone up. Nyatsong also felt that this was a strange person. He vaguely regretted letting him go without asking anything. Perhaps he was really a dangerous person? However, he was already far away. It was too late for him to say anything. He shook his head and smiled again. He said to Gu Yundong and the others, "Let's go. They'll take you there first." Okay. Gu Yundong pulled up the pushcart again and followed behind Nyekong. She continued the topic that had been interrupted. You said that you wanted me to help you with something. What is it? Ahem. Speaking of this, Nyatsong could not help but cough lightly. It's like this. My aunt likes children, especially good-looking children. Seeing that Gu Yundong was frowning and seemed to have misunderstood, he quickly got to the point. I want your younger siblings to chat with my aunt when they're free. Gu Yundong could not understand his train of thought. That's it. Well, actually, it's mainly because my aunt is a little talkative. She won't stop for an hour. Nyatsong was also very helpless. There are many children near her house, but you know that a 4- or 5-year-old kid can't stand to listen to others. After a long time, people will avoid my aunt when they see her. That was indeed quite nagging. Gu Yundong looked down at her younger sister and brother who were walking. It was just accompanying his aunt for a chat. There shouldn't be a problem. Hence, she nodded decisively. No problem. Nyatsong was instantly overjoyed. Don't worry. My aunt is a good person. She was a good person, yet the rent was so expensive. If only she could reduce the rent by chatting with her. The few of them chatted as they turned into an alley. Not long after, they stopped in front of a house. Nyatsong pushed the door open and entered first. Gu Yundong waited at the door with her younger brother and sister. Only then did Gu Yunshu find an opportunity. He reached out and tugged at his sister's sleeve. He asked softly, Sister, do I have to chat with her? Then what should I say? You can listen to what she has to say. Gu Yundong squatted down and took out a handkerchief to wipe his face with water. They were already at her door, so they naturally had to tidy up. After you listen to her, you can tell eldest sister about it later. Of course, you can also ask her questions. Any questions are fine. Gu Yundong did not know much about Xuanhe Prefecture. They happened to meet a local old lady who liked to chat. Wasn't that the best source of information? She could everything that she should pay attention to along with useless gossip. Gu Yunshu nodded, not fully understanding. On the other side, Gu Yunka had already stretched her little head over. Eldest sister, wipe me too. You shameless little girl. Gu Yundong tapped her little nose. You have to chat with older brother and old madam too. Understand? I'll accompany big sister. She liked big sister more, and she didn't want to accompany her brother. If you're obedient, I'll make you something delicious later. Gu Yunka immediately grabbed Gu Yunshu's hand. I'll be obedient. Gu Yundong felt that sooner or later, she would be abducted by someone with food. She was too easy to convince. Just as she was thinking about it, she suddenly heard a shout. It seemed to be coming from the entrance of the alley. She did not know what had happened. Gu Yundong could not really care about this matter right now. She quickly asked Madame Yang to bring the two children through the door. After closing the door, she walked cautiously towards the alley. There was a big tree at the entrance of the alley. At this moment, there was a circle of people under the tree, pointing at the middle and saying something. She stood on a rock and looked inside. She was stunned. Wasn't that the young man she had seen at the entrance of the government office? Was he tying someone up? Chapter 28. Fancy operations. The young man held a rope in his hand and grabbed a middle-aged man who was cursing with his other hand. He was tying the rope around the latter's waist. The middle-aged man struggled a few times but could not break free. He cursed in a really unsightly manner. "You little ****starred mongrel. You have a mother but no mother raised you. Hurry up and let go, or I'll break your legs. How dare a bastard from the countryside be arrogant in this prefecture city? Be careful not to die without knowing how. Kid, remember this. Let go quickly." Halfway through tying him up, the young man suddenly punched him in the stomach. "Ugh!" The middle-aged man bent over and groaned in pain. His face was red, and he couldn't finish his sentence. Bastard! Gu Yundong felt that this person deserved it. He could not see the situation clearly at a time like this. Someone at the side was curious and asked what was going on. An onlooker seemed to know the inside story and said softly, "Shopkeeper Pan deserves it. He's stingy and vengeful. You know how his shop needed to be renovated some time ago and he hired this kid to help with the work? In the end, many refugees have come to look for work these days. As long as they get meals to eat, they don't even ask for money. Shopkeeper Pan wants to chase this kid away to hire refugees. If you want him to leave, so be it. He has to at least settle his previous salary, right?" "What? Shopkeeper Pan wanted to go back on his word to pay him? Not only that, he even found an excuse to say that he did not do a good job and wanted to ask for compensation instead. However, this kid is not easy to bully. He forced Shopkeeper Pan to take out the money. However, before he left, Shopkeeper Pan went to the government office to report a case. He said that this kid was the leader of the riot in Qingan Prefecture previously and got someone to arrest him. Ah, this is too immoral." The onlookers shook their heads in surprise. Was this really a way to behave? Who didn't know what the constables in the government office were like? Wouldn't anyone be skinned alive if they were arrested? Isn't he wicked? This kid is just lucky. The constables released him not long after bringing him back. Wouldn't he obviously have to settle scores with Shopkeeper Pan? As soon as he finished speaking, the young man had already tied Shopkeeper Pan up. The rope was suddenly thrown around the tree trunk above his head and pressed down. "Ah!" Shopkeeper Pan screamed like a pig being slaughtered. He was already hanging in midair and swaying left and right. There was a hard limestone slab below. If the rope broke and he fell, how could his old arms and legs withstand it? He finally began to beg for mercy. "Ching boy, I was wrong. Put me down quickly. I'm dizzy. If you want money, I'll give it to you. How about 10 copper coins? I'll give it to you if you put me down." Puffed. Someone laughed and looked at Shopkeeper Pan gloatingly. "How generous. 10 copper coins. You sent him to the government office." Shopkeeper Pan's face was ashen, but he could not see who was speaking from his position. The young man ignored him. He watched as Shopkeeper Pan was hung 2 meters high before stopping. Then, he wrapped the rope around the tree trunk twice and tied it tightly before finally clapping his hands, as if he admired his masterpiece. The onlookers pointed at him even more. It was probably because Shopkeeper Pan was not popular usually, but no one went forward to help put him down, nor did anyone plead for leniency. Shopkeeper Pan felt that he had lost all his face today. Wait and see. If he didn't break the youth's legs when he came down, his surname wouldn't be Pan. However, he soon realized that he did not have such an opportunity. Chapter 29. Going to earn money. Shopkeeper Pan was sinisterly thinking of ways to deal with him when 2 constables walked over. They were the 2 who had captured the youth earlier. When they saw the young man standing under the tree, one of them was instantly angry. Great enemies really met on a narrow road. He hadn't returned the kick from before. Since young Master Nye wasn't around, let's see who still dared to speak up for him. The constable went forward to look for trouble, but was stopped by the other. The latter pointed at Gu Yundong, who was standing not far away, and shook his head slightly. The constable quickly recognized this person as the person who had been with young Master Nye earlier. If she was here, young Master Nye might be nearby. In the end, he endured it and did not look at the youth again. On the other hand, the young man noticed their actions and happened to see Gu Yundong. His gaze was cold, and he still had a very indifferent attitude. Only then did the two constables look at shopkeeper Pan, who was hanging in the air. Seeing his fat and short figure flapping in the air like a tortoise that had flipped over, they were instantly amused. "You're Pan Fu." Pan Fu raised his head slightly and was overjoyed to see the clothes they were wearing. He hurriedly said, Sir Constable, save me quickly. He wants to kill me too. Are you Pan Fu?" The constable interrupted impatiently. Pan Fu was stunned for a moment before nodding. Yes, I'm Pan Fu. You're the one who went to the government office to report a fake case and delayed us from catching the real criminal? Do you know how serious the consequences of your actions are? You're really bold. What kind of place do you think the magistrate's office is? Who do you think we are? Do you think you can use your position to take revenge and spout nonsense? Pan Fu was so frightened that his face instantly turned pale. His body trembled twice as he hurriedly said, "No, I didn't. Constables, I really didn't report a fake case. Wang De is my cousin in the government office. He can prove that what I said is the truth." "What cousin? Didn't you report a fake case? Come with us to the government office." "What Wang De? A miscellaneous worker in the government office dared to be someone's backer?" The constable sneered and went forward to cut the rope. Pan Fu fell onto the limestone slab with a bang, his face contorting in pain. But before he could recover, the two constables had already grabbed his arms and dragged him away. The onlookers did not dare to speak at this moment. Only when they were gone did they discuss softly. Shopkeeper Pan is finished. Serves him right. He knew that if that young man was convicted, the outcome would not be good, but he was still so vicious as to frame someone. Gu Yundong reflexively turned to look at the youth and saw that he had already passed through the crowd and disappeared. The crowd gradually dispersed. Gu Yundong turned around and saw Nyetsong looking for her. What happened here? Gu Yundong recounted the situation just now. Nyetsong raised his eyebrows in surprise. That kid is definitely the type to take revenge. He's just too rash. If those two constables don't take Pan Fu away, Pan Fu will definitely not let him off. He shook his head and did not continue the topic. He immediately told Gu Yundong about his aunt's situation. "My aunt has already agreed to rent to you for a month if you pay 3 taels of silver first. You can stay in the West Wing for now. You have to settle your meals yourself. You can use the things in the room, but you can't damage them." Gu Yundong nodded. After paying 3 taels of silver, she only had 2 taels left. "I'm so poor. I have to earn money quickly." However, there were so many refugees in the city now. There were too many monks and too little porridge. How could she earn money? Suddenly, she looked at Nyetsong beside her, and a glint flashed across her eyes. Chapter 30. Help. Nyetsong felt his scalp tingle under her gaze. He felt like he was being targeted. Sure enough, Gu Yundong stood still and asked him, "Are you very eager to catch the criminal who led the rebellion in Qingan Prefecture?" "Of course." Nyetsong nodded affirmatively. At this point, his expression could not help but become a little serious. This person is not a refugee at all. He's a bandit pretending to be a refugee. He deliberately incited the people to break into the city gate and took the opportunity to kill and earn money. He's guilty of a heinous crime. When he escaped after that, it was said that he even harmed the nearby villages. It's very likely that he came to our Shuanhe province. If we don't catch this person as soon as possible, I'm afraid more people will suffer. Gu Yundong was not a hero who enforced justice on behalf of the heavens. She would not have the strong desire to get rid of evil like Nyetsong did. At the moment, she could only take care of her small family. She only wanted to earn some money to use. Therefore, she said very calmly, if I help you capture criminals, will I be rewarded? Nyetsong was stunned. Help? How can you help? Will there be a reward? Nyetsong's lips could not help but twitch. Yes. How much? That depends on how much help you can provide. Nyetsong was a little suspicious. He thought that she had also been escaping from the drought. Could it be that she had seen that person or knew where that person had appeared? But Gu Yundong quickly disproved his idea. Someone in your government office should have seen the criminal's appearance, right? Yes. A squad under Commander Zhao that went to Qingan Prefecture happened to face that person head-on. But unfortunately, he escaped. Then find a soldier that has seen him and describe the criminal. They'll draw him for you. Nyetsong immediately lost interest. He thought it was something else. Just drawing a portrait? There were many wanted posters posted at the city gate. They were all drawn by the best painters in the city according to the oral description. There were many of the posters, and she did not need to draw them. Gu Yundong knew what he was thinking just by looking at his expression. She raised her eyebrows. Touch your conscience and tell me, do you think you can match the portrait on your wanted poster with the real person standing in front of you? Of course, I also know that you didn't arrest the criminal just because of the portrait. But you saw the situation of the young man being arrested today. Shopkeeper Pan is definitely not the only one who wants to use his position to take revenge on a fake case. After that, you can completely use the excuse of this person looks similar to the portrait to avoid it. Isn't this causing trouble for you and wasting time and energy? Believe me, I can save you half the effort. Nyetsong felt that what she said was wrong. Ordinary people were afraid of entering the government office. After all, there were very few people like Shopkeeper Pan who did not know the immensity of heaven and earth and thought that they had a backer. However, he felt that what she said made sense. Although it was rare, wasn't there still some cases? After some thought, Nyetsong saw how confident she was and said conservatively, if you want to try, then try. However, you can't go to the government office. Let's draw it in private and take a look. If it doesn't work, pretend that nothing happened. Okay. Nyetsong said that he would not go to his aunt's house. He was afraid of annoying her, so he went to a tea house not far away. Gu Yundong was worried about Madame Yang and the other two. She wanted to see Nyetsong's aunt first. Hence, the two of them returned to the small courtyard first. When they entered, they happened to hear his aunt and Madame Yang talking. Get some water to wash up first. You guys are disheveled. Those who don't know better will think that a beggar has entered our house. Do you have clean clothes? If not, I'll go next door to borrow them for you. However, I have to tell you guys that you can't ruin the clothes or you'll have to pay. Oh my! These two little darlings. Chapter 31. What does he look like? Gu Yundong began to believe Nyetsong's words. This aunt was indeed quite talkative. Nyetsong's aunt's surname was Ku. Her husband was a childhood sweetheart who grew up with her. Unfortunately, he passed away from illness less than a year after they got married. Aunt Ku had no children and did not marry anyone else. She just guarded their old house and lived her own life. Perhaps it was because there were too few people around her, so she especially liked to talk to children. Others suggested that she adopt a child, but she did not agree. She said that she felt free living alone. The house in front of them was not big. Aunt Ku lived in one room herself, so the west wing was given to them for the time being. The central room in the middle was quite big, and there was a kitchen next to the west wing. The outhouse was at the back of the storeroom, and there was a small well in the courtyard. It was quite convenient. At this moment, Auntie Ku pointed at the well and instructed Madame Yang. Get water yourself. Be careful. Don't fill my courtyard with water. The kitchen is over there, and the bucket is inside. What are you waiting for? Hurry up and go. Madame Yang couldn't help but hold the two children's hands and take a step back. She didn't know Auntie Ku and only felt that the other party spoke very quickly. It was difficult for her to even understand, so how could she move? Just as she was at a loss as to whether to run away, she saw Gu Yundong enter. Madame Yang hurriedly ran behind her and pointed at Auntie Ku. Dong dong. She talks a lot. Gu Yundong squeezed her hand comfortingly and said in a low voice, Mother, she's Aunt Ku. Well, stay at her house for the time being. She won't hurt us. Get water first and wipe Ashu and Kiki's bodies. After washing them, we can sleep on a soft bed. We don't have to travel anymore. We don't have to travel anymore? Madame Yang couldn't help but be happy. Gu Yundong nodded at her and watched as Madame Yang excitedly ran to fetch water. Then, she walked to Aunt Ku, who had been sizing her up. Aunt Ku, my name is Gu Yundong. This is 3 taels of silver. I might have to trouble you for the next period of time. My mother's situation is special. If you talk to her too much at once, she will panic. Please don't mind. Aunt Ku was a little surprised. From her words and actions, she did not have the timidity of a country girl at all. She seemed to have seen the world. She took the silver and nodded slightly. You look like a reasonable person. Not bad. As long as your mother can work and take good care of you, and I don't have to do anything, that will be fine. What about you? Nyatsong was a little anxious and could not help but interrupt her. Aunt, I still have something that I need Miss Gus help with. Please take care of her family first. They'll buy you a hibiscus cake later. Rascal, hurry up and leave. He must have been annoyed with her for talking too much. Nyatsong smiled. Seeing that Gu Yundong had finished talking to Gu Yunshu, he quickly brought her away. He first brought Gu Yundong to the tea house. Gu Yundong was still wearing the clothes she had worn on the escape route. Her face was also dirty. Without him, the tea house would not let her in. After asking her to wait in the private room, Nyatsong went to the government office and called over a soldier who had seen the bandits. When he returned, he also brought a whole set of brush, ink, paper, and inkstone. Gu Yundong only took the paper and asked the waiter from the tea house for a charcoal pen. Nyatsong did not understand and tried his best to ask tactfully, Are you not used to using a brush? How could he forget that a country girl had definitely never studied? Gu Yundong could not help but roll her eyes. All right, tell me what the bandit looks like first. Tell me about his eyes, nose, mouth, and face. Try to be as detailed as possible. Chapter 32. Gu Yundong's ability on the way here. The soldier had already heard Nyatsong tell him what had happened, but he did not expect the person who was going to draw the picture to be a disheveled teenaged girl who looked like a refugee. Just her? She knew how to draw portraits? And she thought that she was better than the painters in Shuanha province? Are you kidding me? If Nyatsong wasn't here, he would have turned around and left already. Gu Yundong saw that he was sullen and did not speak. She knew that he did not trust her. She tapped the table slightly and asked with a smile, Could it be that you don't remember what the criminal looked like? Who said I don't remember? The soldier immediately retorted. Then his eyes were filled with hatred. That bandit killed my good brother who fought alongside me. I can dream of him every night. I know how many moles there are on his face. Then tell me. The soldier choked. Nyatsong, who was beside him, bumped his arm again. Only then did he clench his fists and say, His face is a little round, and he looks like an honest person. His eyebrows are rather thick, and they're very black and long. His eyes are not big, and they're long and narrow. His nose is more chubby, and his mouth is a little like mine. Gu Yundong lowered her head and drew with a charcoal pen according to what he said. As she drew, she would ask him from time to time, Is that so? Or should it be rounder? Are the bags under his eyes deep? What kind of long and narrow is it? Does he have a lot of fat on his chin? At first, she only drew a rough outline. When she was more or less certain, she took out another piece of white paper and integrated all the facial features that the soldier had mentioned. Gu Yundong was very fast. In no time, she had finished drawing. The soldier had said that he was thirsty and went to drink some tea. When he came back and looked, he spat out a mouthful of tea. Ah, be careful. Gu Yundong hurriedly moved the paper away and glared at him fiercely. The soldier hurriedly wiped his mouth and eagerly picked up the piece of paper. His eyes widened. Song had taken a few steps back when he dodged the tea the soldier spat out. At this moment, he looked up at his shocked expression and could not help but ask curiously, "What's wrong?" The soldier muttered in disbelief, "Similar, too similar. They're simply too similar." "Is it really that similar? Wasn't that too exaggerated?" Song shook his head and walked around the table to look from behind him. He was stunned on the spot. The soldier said in disbelief, It's like it's carved out of his face. There's actually such a drawing method." Song shook his head in surprise. He carefully took it from the soldier's hand and looked at it again and again. He could not help but click his tongue in wonder. Those painter's drawings were also very good, but Song was not a master of calligraphy and painting. He did not know much about the topic and could not appreciate them. He only knew that the artistic conception was quite beautiful, and the characters were also very beautiful. However, there was still a gap between them and real people. At least, it was not very useful for using those to solve cases. But now, this character drawing seemed to have come alive. And this was only drawn with a charcoal pencil. When he looked up at Gu Yundong again, Song's gaze changed. Was this Miss Gu really just a country bumpkin who did not know anything? "Who taught you how to draw?" Gu Yundong also took a sip of water and shrugged. "Someone I don't know. He didn't tell me his name." Chapter 33. Gu Yundong's past. Song was a little disappointed, but then he felt that it was normal. There were many strange people in this world, especially those with true ability. For example, there was a famous Go player in their prefecture city who was a very strange person. Gu Yundong did not know that he had already found an excuse for her. She rubbed her sore wrist. She had not drawn for a long time and was a little rusty. Fortunately, she slowly found the feeling again. Gu Yundong was an orphan in her previous life. She did not have a good life in the orphanage. When she was 5 years old, she had been adopted. However, half a year later, the couple who adopted her met with a car accident and passed away. She was sent back to the orphanage. Someone unknown said that she was a jinx, and that she had jinxed the couple to death. Because of this rumor, she had no friends at the orphanage at all. The director also didn't like her. The orphanage's resources were limited. In order to eat and wear warm clothes, the children in the orphanage actually fought openly and secretly. Gu Yundong was the one who was often bullied, but every time there was any conflict, the director would punish her. Gu Yundong had known since she was 5 years old that she had to support herself and could not be weak. She didn't have much feelings for the orphanage, but she worked hard and got into university herself. She worked part-time and studied to help herself find a job after graduating from university. At that time, the major she was most interested in was art. However, it took money and time to learn art. However, she lacked both and could only give up. Sometimes, when she couldn't help but feel tempted, she would go to the art academy to freeload some classes. She was very talented in this aspect and learned intermittently, and her drawing was very stunning. Even the teacher could not help but feel that it was a pity about her character drawing talent. He even applied for a scholarship for her to study this, but Gu Yundong rejected this. For people who had no guarantees in the future, hobbies were sometimes very extravagant. However, he did not expect that what he had learned back then would be useful here. She rubbed her wrist for a while and asked Song and Xiao Bing, who were still holding the piece of drawing paper and discussing while praising her. "So, is this okay?" The two of them nodded hurriedly. Yes, of course. It's too good." Song went to get another piece of paper. The smile on his face was much more eager. "Let's draw 2 more. Only 2 more. No more than that." She was beginning to miss the copy machine. With the first drawing, the second and third drawings were much faster. Not long after, Song gathered the 3 portraits and was about to leave. "Quick, go back to the government office and get someone to arrest him with these. Someone must have seen him before." After changing her clothes and letting her wet hair down, Gu Yundong walked out of the room in high spirits. At this moment, the sky was already a little dark. Madame Yang and the others were not in the courtyard. Instead, there was a slight movement from the kitchen. Gu Yundong looked over and saw Aunt Ku making pancakes and porridge. Madame Yang was tending the fire. Aunt Ku was surprised to see her enter. Although she could tell that this family was pretty good-looking after Madame Yang and the other two washed their faces, she was still a little dazed when she saw Gu Yundong. If a clean and refreshing young lady like her ate better and gained some weight, she would really not be described only as delicate and pretty anymore. Snapping out of her daze, Auntie Ku quickly coughed lightly and said, "I saw that you guys didn't have much to eat after traveling all day. For the sake of the 3 taels of silver, I'll buy dinner today. But let me make it clear first. You have to get food yourself tomorrow. I want care." Chapter 35. I'll cook meat for you. Aunt K's culinary skills were not bad. Dinner was porridge with pancakes and pickled vegetables. The few of them ate very contentedly. When they returned to their room later, Madame Yang and the other two quickly fell asleep. However, Gu Yundong kept his eyes open and looked at the bed curtains. She was not sleepy at all. She had already developed the habit of keeping watch at night. When she suddenly calmed down, she actually could not fall asleep. With Gu Yunka in her arms, the little girl even snuggled up to her when she was asleep. She looked very dependent. Gu Yundong suddenly felt a warmth in her heart when she saw her purse her lips and move. It was great. They were finally not wandering around homelessly anymore and would not encounter inexplicable danger. They could eat hot food and sleep on a soft bed. They even had family. Gu Yundong gradually relaxed and slowly fell asleep. The next morning, she went out with 2 taels of silver. Aunt Ku had said that she had to cook her own food today. Now that she had settled down, she still had many things to buy. At the very least, she could not use the landlord's food. However, she only had 2 taels of silver, and she had to buy a lot of things. The prices in the prefecture city were not cheap either. It seemed that she had to ask for the debt that was owed her. Gu Yundong went straight to the government office, but the guard at the door said that Nyetsong was not there. He seemed to have gone to arrest someone. Gu Yundong could only go shopping with 2 taels of silver to see if there was anywhere nearby that she could earn money. After walking around, she gave up. There were many refugees in the city. She asked around and found out that these people only needed food and accommodation to work. They did not need to be paid at all. Wasn't this destroying the market? How could work be for free? Gu Yundong sighed heavily and went to the market Aunt Ku had told her about. The market was lively. Gu Yundong bought a few vegetables, onions, ginger, and garlic, and went to cut 2 caddies of meat. After walking around, she suddenly realized that there was a stall in the corner selling apples. When the stall owner saw her stop, he immediately greeted her warmly. "Miss, come and take a look at this sand fruit. This is good stuff. It's sour and sweet, and it can quench thirst. The doctor said that it can help with digestion and treatment. I specially brought it over from Yen province. We don't have it here and it's not expensive. 10 copper coins each. Miss, how many do you want?" 10 copper coins each? Everyone in your prefecture knew how to rob, right? Forget it, she had it in her spatial storage. Gu Yundong turned around and left. The vendor hurriedly called out to her, "Hey miss, don't leave. The price is negotiable. Can be cheaper." Gu Yundong walked even faster and left the market with the basket. Then, she went into the rice and grain shop and bought a bucket of rice and 2 caddies of white flour. She turned around and went to the grocery store to buy oil, salt, cutlery, and so on. She began to miss modern large supermarkets. Initially, she wanted to go to the cloth shop to get some cloth, but after thinking about it, she decided not to. They could still wear the 2 sets of clothes after washing them. She would buy cloth when she had money. Currently, she was poor. After buying everything, Gu Yundong could no longer carry all the items. She took advantage of the fact that no one was paying attention when she turned into a corner and stuffed a portion into her spatial storage. Then, She held the remaining tael of silver and slowly went home. Money was really something that was used quickly. Aunt Ku was not at home. When Gu Yundong entered the courtyard, Gu Yunka ran over and hugged her thigh. Eldest sister, what did you buy? I'll cook braised pork for you later. Gu Yundong lowered the basket for her to take a look. The little girl swallowed her saliva. What's braised pork? Gu Yundong remembered that in the past, in the Gu family, their family could barely eat meat, let alone Gu Yunka, who was so young. Moreover, Mrs. Zhao would not cook braised pork for them. Chapter 36. For dishes and one soup, Gu Yundong stroked the little girl's furry and yellow hair and smiled. You'll know when eldest sister does it. Gu Yunka swallowed. It must be delicious. Gu Yundong went to the kitchen. She first took 2 apples, cut them, and placed them on a plate. She handed them to Gu Yunka, who had followed her in. Bring them to the central room to eat with brother and mother. What's this? The little girl looked curiously at the moist apple petals in a circle and reached out her little finger to touch them quietly. Gu Yundong was charmed by her cute actions. She picked up a piece and stuffed it into her mouth. This is an apple. It's delicious, but it's a little expensive. You can't waste it, understand? Gu Yunka took a bite. It was crispy and juicy. It was even sweeter than wild dates. Her round eyes immediately lit up. She quickly grabbed it with her small hand and bit it bit by bit. Go! Gu Yundong nudged her. The young lady carried the plate and went to look for her brother. Gu Yundong rolled up her sleeves, washed the rice, and cooked the rice. She stuffed 2 large sticks of firewood under the stove. Only then did she go and wash her hands. She first prepared a cucumber and made a cold cucumber for a refreshing dish. She did not dare to add spicy seasoning. Children could not eat it then. Then, she cut the eggplants and took half a piece of meat to chop it up. She made a minced eggplant dish. Then, she cracked 3 eggs and steamed a large bowl of steamed eggs. She sprinkled some green onions. They were yellow and green and the colors were bright. Just looking at them made one's appetite rise. Then, she started to roast the braised pork. She had bought streaky pork that cost 25 copper coins a catty. The meat in the prefecture capital was also especially expensive. Gu Yundong knew how to cook since she was young. When she was alone, she would reward herself from time to time. Although her culinary skills were not as good as a chef in big restaurants, they were not bad. Therefore, when Antika entered the door, she smelled a rich fragrance. It was so fragrant that she subconsciously swallowed her saliva. She followed the smell to the kitchen and saw the busy Gu Yundong. Then, she saw a few dishes on the dining table beside her and could not move her feet. Gu Yundong turned around and saw her. She wiped her hands and said, Aunt Ko, you're back. Rest for a while. They'll cook some soup and we can eat. Auntie Ko tried her best to look away and said with a straight face, It's still early. Take your time to cook it. They'll just eat some noodles alone. Till be quick. Gu Yundong smiled. You're treating me like an outsider. You spent so much effort to make dinner for our family of 4 yesterday. How can I let you eat noodles alone? Let's eat together later. I counted you in when I cooked. If you don't eat, it will be a waste. Chapter 37. 2 pieces of news. Gu Yundong looked up in surprise when she saw the tael of silver. Aunt Ku said unnaturally, I won't eat your food for nothing. Treat the tael of silver as food money. Anyway, you have to cook for a few people. You can also cook mine to save yourself the trouble. 1 tael of silver is enough, right? It's enough. Come with me to buy groceries another day. I know which store's food is cheap and fresh. Gu Yundong put away the silver and immediately nodded. No problem. The 1 tael of silver that she had spent today was finally back. Her heart did not ache so much anymore. Gu Yundong happily placed the bowls on the table. The 2 little ones and Madame Yang looked at the dishes on the table impatiently. Big sister was so amazing. They had never smelled such a fragrance before. Gu Yunka took a bite of the steamed egg. Her face seemed to be glowing as if she was intoxicated. It's smooth and delicious. Gu Yundong looked at her and felt a little sad. The young lady had never eaten steamed eggs. Madame Zhao was very stingy with their family. If there was good food, it was given to the second and third uncle's families. If they dared to crave it, she would slap them mercilessly. She scooped a big spoonful for Gu Yunka. Eat more if you like it. I'll make it for you often in the future. Eldest sister, you're the best. The little girl raised her head and chuckled. I like this place. There's no grandmother Zhao to scold me, and no second sister to hit me. There's also delicious food. It's even better than in my dreams. The second sister she was talking about was her cousin from second uncle's family. She was a year younger than Gu Yundong, but she was arrogant and domineering. Seeing that Gu Yunka was pink and tender and prettier than her, she often pinched her. The little girl cried and ran to look for Gu Yundong. The original host Gu Yundong was a crybaby and weak person, but she still helped her to reason with the girl from second uncle's family. In the end, they quarreled. Mrs. Zhao immediately slapped her, causing her ear to bleed. She lay on the bed for a few days before she recovered. The young Gu Yunka was frightened. From then on, she did not complain anymore. She cried silently when she was pinched. In the end, she simply stayed in her room all day and did not go out. Now that Madame Zhao and second sister were not here, her personality gradually became cheerful. Gu Yundong's heart ached, but at the same time, she was very gratified. She felt that making her family members' 3 lives better gave her a sense of accomplishment. Gu Yunshu and Madame Yang also felt sorry for Gu Yunka. They each scooped a spoonful of steamed eggs for her to eat. On the little girl's left was her eldest sister, and on her right was her brother. She felt so happy and stuffed her mouth with food. She was very happy, and Gu Yundong could not help but want to pamper her. Chapter 38. Got money. The banknote was for $50 worth of silver, and it had symbol of the Huaxing Bank, which was accepted in the entire country. Gu Yundong's eyes lit up involuntarily. She heard Nietsong say, "This is a reward from the provincial governor. Your drawing is too useful." We took it and split up to search for him. I didn't expect that more than one person seems to have seen him. Just last night he was captured by us. Even his subordinates were wiped out. Nietsong was still very excited when he said this. Although he had been busy for a few days, he was in high spirits. The governor said that you've made a great contribution. You didn't know, but that bandit entered the city at an unknown time. If we couldn't catch him until a few days later, something would have happened to us. Take the $50 of silver and buy yourself something good. Look at you. You're quite good looking. Just your outfit. Perhaps because he was a little familiar with her now, Nietsong spoke much more casually. Gu Yundong pretended not to hear him and looked at the banknote happily. She had to find an opportunity to exchange it for silver. Anyway, she had a spatial storage and was not afraid of the weight of silver. Unexpectedly, Nietsong took out 2 more silver ingots. This is for you too. This is the entrance fee you paid when you entered the city. The governor said to return it to you. Gu Yundong was surprised and hurriedly took it. Your governor is really a good person. May he have a safe life. Nietsong looked at his empty palm. This action of snatching money was too fast and obvious. He shook his head and laughed. I didn't expect you to be a money grubber. All right, I'll give you the money. It's time for me to leave. Gu Yundong waved her hand and told him to do as he pleased. However, Nietsong had just taken a few steps when he suddenly turned back. After hesitating for a moment, he lowered his voice and whispered, "There's something else I have to tell you first." Seeing his serious expression, Gu Yundong finally looked away from the banknote. What is it? I just came back from the government office and saw someone coming from the capital. I vaguely heard that in the capital. He lowered his voice even more, making her almost unable to hear. The emperor has passed away. Gu Yundong was stunned. The emperor was a word that was very, very far away from her. However, she did not have a good impression of the emperor. There had been a disaster in Yongning Prefecture, and countless people had starved to death. For so long, the imperial court had yet to send people over to deal with the disaster. She had heard that even so, the emperor was still drinking and having fun in the palace. He had obtained concubines one after another and even coincidentally wanted to increase taxes. He was an out-and-out fatuous ruler. It was good that he had passed away. Nyetsong reminded her. The notice should be posted soon and spread throughout the city. It might be a little chaotic during this period of time. Try not to go out or walk around. Don't wear red and green, drink, or have fun. The emperor has passed away and the new emperor has ascended the throne. He will definitely take action. Just wait for the news. Thank you for the reminder. Gu Yundong knew that he was referring to the drought disaster. The late emperor had not done anything, and it was unknown what type of person the new emperor was. She hoped that he was not someone who treated human lives as grass. After Nyetsong left, there was indeed a notice posted at the city gate that afternoon. When the emperor passed away, the world mourned. The commoners had to mourn for 3 months. During this period, they were not allowed to wear red and green, marry, or have fun. 2 days later, another notice was posted at the city gate. The new emperor would ascend to the throne as Emperor Jinwu. The next year, he would change the year's name to the first year of Xingtai. Whether it was the death of the late emperor or the ascension of the new emperor, these were all too far away from Gu Yundong. She did not care too much. Unexpectedly, the new emperor's first action was targeted right at Yongning Prefecture. The imperial court finally sent the imperial envoy to Yongning Prefecture to provide disaster relief. Chapter 41. Deciding on a place to stay. Looking at Gu Yundong, who had just been born, Gu Dajiang and Madame Yang thought for a long time and finally compromised. At that time, Madame Yang was not stupid. Madame Zhao also felt a little guilty because of her difficult labor. Moreover, the doctor said that she might not be able to give birth in the future. So Gu Dajiang flew into a rage and split up the family estates. This was the first time old Gu and Madame Zhao had seen Gu Dajiang so angry. They were a little frightened. They were afraid that he would be forced into a corner and die with everyone. Therefore, when the family of 3 returned to the Gu family's old residence, their lives were not too difficult. Madame Zhao only dared to curse. She did not dare to hit Madame Yang if she was asked to do some work. Thus, Gu Yundong lived a peaceful life for a few years. When Gu Yunshu was born, Madame Zhao's guilty conscience completely flew away and she began to cause trouble again. After Gu Yunka was born, Madame Zhao reverted to her old ways. However, half a year after Madame Yang gave birth to her youngest daughter, she accidentally slipped and fell when she went to the river to wash clothes. Her head hit a rock, and when she woke up, she was not clear. On one hand, Gu Dajiang was looking for an opportunity to bring Madame Yang to the county capital to see a doctor. On the other hand, he had to take care of the children. He was so busy that he could not take care of many things at home. Furthermore, he had encountered a disaster, so it was even more wishful thinking to split up. However, things were different now. They had fled to Xuanhe Prefecture. Not to mention that old Gu and the clan leader could no longer control them, they could still settle down openly. Gu Yundong had no concept of the family at all. A person's life was not long. The most important thing was to live comfortably. However, this was only her opinion. Madame Yang and Gu Yunka did not understand, but they had to seek Gu Yunshu's opinion. Even if it was misleading. As expected, Gu Yunshu thought of his old days in his hometown. He thought of how his father could not retaliate after being kicked by the patriarch. He thought of his life of not being able to eat his fill and wear warm clothes, and of being beaten and scolded. He thought of how his sisters were bullied by their cousins but still had to be slapped by their grandmother. Gu Yunshu immediately shook his head like a rattle drum. I'm not going back. One don't want to go back. Are you sure? Gu Yunshu was very determined. I'm sure. Gu Yundong smiled and patted his head again. Then I won't go back. Aunt Ku put down the sewing basket in her hand and stood up. She patted her clothes and said, Since you've decided, go to the government office to register. Also, see if Nyetsong is around. Let that kid help you look for a good place. With that, she returned to her room, looking a little lonely. Gu Yundong knew that during this period of time, she liked the two children very much and could not bear to part with them. She quickly went to the government office. There were many people gathered at the entrance. Gu Yundong found Nyetsong and told him what she wanted. Nyetsong agreed without hesitation. Don't worry, you're registered with the Lord. They'll definitely choose a good village for you. However, you have to be mentally prepared. The village where the refugees are settled won't be too rich. I understand. Help me take a look and see if there are any villages that are not far from the town and county. Most importantly, the people in the village should be scattered. The village chief is easy to talk to. If she met someone like the Gu family's head again, she would have a headache and vomit blood. Cough, one have too many requests. They'll try my luck. She did not expect Nyetsong to really choose a good village for her. It was considered the best village among all the villages. Gu Yundong followed him to complete all the procedures and set off. However, before she left, she had something to do.